Okay. So when you ready? Very well. Okay. At this time, it is 6:04. And I call this regular city council, meeting of June 6th, 2023 to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Grant. Present. Councilmember Leo.
Here.
Councilmember Hill. Mayor Labby.
Here.
Councilmember Littleton. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Green.
Here,
And Councilmember Pagano.
Present. Thank you. At this time, I would ask for approval of the agenda. We do have one change in the agenda, and that is we'd like to add the administrator's report. Right at the beginning, presentations and discussions before we get to 6A. Any other changes to the agenda? That I would entertain a motion, please.
I move to approve the agenda with the modification of moving the city administrator's report to 6A.
Awesome. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. All in favor. Would you just pass that down to Warren? Right, thanks. At this time, housekeeping matters. I'll just quickly say that the community cleanup is this Saturday from 9 to 1. Hope you can join us. It should be a lot of fun. Picking up trash and Leadville as well. But also we're gonna have a little cookout about noon, the county courthouse. So that might be a nice payoff for the hard work. Any other housekeeping matters that I would like to discuss?
I have one, as we all I'm sure know, recently our property values all skyrocketed in value. For all the benefits and drawbacks that brings, but one of the drawbacks that it continues putting pressure on our most vulnerable communities, including those who are living on set payments such as Social Security and such incomes, as well as low income families who may have purchased their home before our current housing crisis. And that has put an immense amount of pressure on a lot of our community members who have lived in our community for a very long time to potentially move, though it's not imminent, or I guess it would be imminent, though it's not immediate, it is imminent, given that a lien only lasts about 3 years to kind of be able to do that. And for our older community, that is pretty difficult to increase your income. So just know that that is something that is currently happening in our community, it is active, and it is harming our community in one way or another, and we need to be more vigilant at it, and as well as create more pathways for our long-serving community members to not face homelessness or having to completely move away from the community that they live most of their life.
Thank you. Well said. I would maybe suggest we have this on future city council meeting for discussion about how we can help reduce that impact on our citizens. Okay, yes. Sir.
I would like to add to the near future city council meeting, our discussion about Spruce Street and its uses.
Okay, thank you. Any other? All right. Great, thank you very much. At this time, we have public comments about items not on the agenda. If anyone would like to speak to city council, please come up and introduce yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes. Either one.
Going to be Steve, isn't it?
All right.
I have some new data that I wanted to share. Hi, Christy Galarza, Lake County Housing Coalition, facilitator. I have some new data that I wanted to share with you. You guys might find it out.
Thank you.
Mayor's heard it a couple times already, but not great news. Lake County has the highest amount of cost burden renters in the state. With 63% of our renters, a little under 63% of our renters paying more than 30% of their income towards housing. There's a lot of things that are contributing to this, right? Like, we know that our wages, are a little lower than surrounding communities, but our housing prices have continued to grow along with surrounding communities, so. I included the website that you can go to see some of the other data points in there. At the top, I just wanted to show that to you guys, and, I'm a broken record in saying that you gotta do all the policies that you can possibly, think about doing to try to, get at this housing problem. And then I also just wanted to share, that the county is going to be running some town halls in June about their short-term rental moratorium. They're gonna be changing some regulations on those, and they're hoping to collect community member input. June 15th from 6 to 8 p.m. in Twin Lakes, and June 21st at Freight from 6 to 8 p.m. And I'll be co-hosting with them, so they'd love to have you guys weigh in also and share your perspective and all that stuff. All I got for you.
Thank you very much.
So it's on Steve Prestash, I live at 131 East Third Street. I'm hoping I could have somebody join me today in this, but I hear someone's coming. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, inspired Constitution, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So back on to Judge Thomas's Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court Justice Judge Thomas, and how it applies to conflict of interest with realtors doing things to accelerate the gentrification and problems themselves in our community that are in government. Tracy Lawrence and having dual roles in the county government, and I just can't remember. The municipal judge is also the county attorney. These are all conflict of interest things. This is from the New Yorker, May 22nd this year. The ending of a commentary on this issue with Judge Thomas. Our standards for public officials have declined, as demonstrated by Donald Trump's continuing popularity. But the current moment is an opportunity to move beyond being scandalized by one justice. If rules for justices are understood as not binding, it compromises the idea that no officials are above the law. And this is a little confusing. It's saying that it compromises the idea that no officials are above the law. But apparently we have officials in Lake County that continue to make judgments and rulings that are beyond what is the law to be. In the Denver paper, they were talking about the Taiwan and the China. And the United States said at some symposium in Singapore recently, the deep fear aggression to deepen the rules and norms that promote prosperity and prevent conflict. Steadfastly, the city council has made rulings that promote prosperity for realtors and people with large incomes, but and at the same time seem to encourage conflict. That's more all at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Jack, that's good.
I just wanted to invite all of you to attend a forum with us in Getting West on June 13th, 11 a.m. If you can make it, that would be great. It's pretty amazing facility and it's going to be fun for everyone to see it. So, thank you.
Is it June 13th, right?
I've done that. It's unreal what they do there. Yeah. Anybody gets a chance to go, you'll be amazed. Anybody else who would like to speak? Tim, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. My name is Tim Bergman. I serve as the Lake County Manager. I just wanted to let you all know that the hazard mitigation plan that we discussed last year has been funded, and the RFP will be going out soon. And just a reminder from what City Council approved last year, it's $750 cash match, and a $520 in-kind match.
Thank you, Jim. Jim, we have a question from City Council. Max, please ask.
Yes, I'm just curious, for a hazard mitigation plan with that little amount of funding, can you elaborate on what this hazard mitigation plan is gonna entail?
Yes, so you can think of this mostly as an update to our current hazard mitigation plan. So a review of what we have in there, what needs to be improved upon, agency responses, having our new OEM, things like that. Thankfully, the county's match is a little bit bigger, but it's also a smaller dollar amount, mostly funded by the Division of Homeland Security.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else who would like to speak to City Council on items not on the agenda? Great, thank you all very much. At this time, we have presentations and discussion. We have the administrator's report.
Great, thank you. A few updates, some good news regarding Streets Department efforts. So the diagonal parking that used to exist over by the post office, those diagonal parking lines were removed or painted over today. And so we are in the process of getting the word out that that is now parallel parking in that area. So Streets Department and interim chief have been verbally letting people know. Today flyers went up at the post office, both in English and in Spanish. And then the police department has parked a police car as a demonstration, and they parked it parallel. And so then they'll do that later. I think tomorrow they'll park another car close to Harrison to really demonstrate that the parking is that, sort of imitation. The parking is now parallel, not diagonal. So we've taken care of that. Longer version you need to remove those lines and scrub them was going to damage the asphalt, and it probably leaves lines. So we decided paint was the best way to go. So you can still sort of see where it was. That's why we're getting the word out and letting people know. Signs for the new parking lots. So the city parking lots, the signage is completed. Those lots are the ones behind Western Hardware. The mayor, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. There's one sign on each end of that parking lot to let people know that that is public parking. The community banks parking lot space that we lease. There's a sign in the alley now that indicates there's public parking that direction, and there's one sign on each end of that lot. And there's also one sign on the corner of 5th and Harrison indicating the direction of public parking. The Streets Department also raised the signs for the EV parking because they were really low. You couldn't see them from the street. So those signs have been raised so you can see where the electric vehicle parking is. So that's all good news to get those things checked off of our list. One thing I wanted to pass along is we received information that I would love to get out to our business community. There's a government contracting workshop available for small businesses. And this is essentially a short list of businesses in town. If there actually is a natural disaster, wildfire, a list of contractors that the federal government would pre-approve in advance. If we needed, if there was a need for water or hardware supplies or those types of things. So that is going to be on June 8th from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and June 9th from 8 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at the CMC campus. So I just wanted to get that information out as much as we could. The other great news of collaboration within the city, the animal shelter has a new washer and dryer. I wanted to specifically thank Planned Parenthood for their financial help towards that of $1,600. But a complete team effort. The streets department went down to Frisco and picked it up and brought it all up to the animal shelter, and that's fantastic. It's working really well. The police department town hall. This is the town hall, the suggestion of city council to get community input regarding the values of the police department and in our efforts to look for a permanent police chief. That will be next Monday, June 12th at 5:30 p.m. at Freight. There will be an ad in the paper, in this week's paper. I think there's also potentially going to be an article that includes that information. We've got flyers up around town. And I want to thank the police department, CSOs for handing out flyers about that event around town. The mayor and I attended the Colorado Municipal League legislative update / neighborhood meeting in Salida. And while there was lots of legislation, there are two things that I want to bring up for the city council. You may recall, and there's some confusion about this because the bill was initially drafted with an error in it, but the plastic bag fee. So there's starting in 2023, there's a fee when you use a plastic bag. Because of a drafting error, the businesses could collect that fee, but actually got to retain the fee because it didn't require businesses to remit the fee to local governments until 2024. So it was just a pure drafting error. It was supposed to be collected and remitted in 2023. This legislative session, the legislature corrected that. So bringing this to everybody's attention because this will be something we will bring to you, but essentially that fee that's now being collected by the retail businesses is something the city can request be remitted to us rather than being retained by the retail establishments. So here, I think it's Safeway is in the county, but Big R would be one where there would be a retail fee that they're actually collecting and retaining those funds. So we would need to actually, pass legislation that indicates that we would like that to come to us. The other update, and I think this was one of the bills that we were kind of keeping an eye on, the Household 23-1190, the Affordable Housing Right of First Refusal passed. So that bill allows local governments to extend a right of first refusal to purchase multifamily properties, to preserve those properties for affordable housing. This is essentially the guidance we got was that if we did not want to do that, if we did not want those properties to be presented to the city on a right of first refusal, we would need to opt out of that. So that's a discussion we would need to have as whether or not we want any multifamily properties to be presented to the city. Obviously, if we don't have the means to acquire them, then all you're doing is slowing down the process for someone to, sell their property. But if it is something we want to do, that bill did pass. There were lots of other bills we got updates on, but I think those were some of the ones that required action on our part. The mayor and I attended the Climax second quarter community update. That was May 24th. If you care, the price of Molly fell slightly to about $21 per pound, but is holding steady. The thing that I care about and that I kind of watch is that they have 70 vacancies. And again, they indicated housing was their one issue for hiring. What they're doing right now to account for that is they are filling those positions with contractors. And so they have about 155 contractors at this point. Last thing, great news. If you've been watching across the street, the parklet construction is nearing completion and the landscaping will start in June. There's a ribbon cutting potentially sometime in July, and just want to thank Hope for Homes, who has been really working hard to make sure that gets completed, and really was just in the final phases. You can see it was painted the other day. The work carts are out. It's looking really nice over there. So those are the updates that I have for now, and happy to answer any questions.
If we were to request the remittance of the 10 cents per bag, could they turn around and then ask us to pay for the bags?
No. No, I think it's 6 cents actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
10.
Is it 10?
It's definitely tough.
Oh, wait, okay. All right. So whatever the fee is, yeah, the legislation required it to just eventually be remitted, but that was the drafting error that was corrected. So I don't think it provides for us to it is is to disincentivize the use of plastic
Sure,
bags.
and I appreciate that all
Right.
around.
Ms. Simonson, I haven't walked over there directly, however, I've noticed that, at Union Parklet, the sidewalks entering the building seem pretty small. Is that an ADA accessible building? Does that meet the ADA accessibility?
Yeah, it has to, so we can make sure that that's the case.
Surprised that it's a very thin sidewalk or entrance to the actual bathroom facilities.
So the doors to the actual bathrooms?
So the sidewalk, like the raised sidewalk.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't know if that's something.
well, it's easy enough for us to double check that.
Yeah, I am not an expert, however, they seem relatively small, so I would look into that.
Yep, that's an easy enough thing for us to look up and make sure we're compliant, but it has to be compliant.
Okay.
Any other questions from the city administrator? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next time we have a presentation on the Boom Day Committee. Just talking to us about their temporary use permit and give some ideas. What's up for this year and we can ask any questions that occur to us.
Sure. Chris Duffy is my name. I'm the acting president this year of Boom Days. And I just wanted everybody to know that we have no changes. It'll be the same as last year. And any comments you guys have on or any questions or concerns? One thing I did notice, I made a clerical error on one of my paperwork. It's 56 of August.
And I corrected that in their packet, so I made sure. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. So if anybody has any questions or comments, Boom Days will this year. Been part of this town for over 70 years now, and I can see it going, which is why I volunteered to help keep it going.
I have one comment or question rather, at 6th Street Gym, it has been tradition that there's a gun show. I know that, back when this was presented, when Cisco was a council member, he took issue with this and, I feel like it's time to kind of revisit that conversation, given how much gun violence has increased in our country and could potentially even come to our communities. Well, whether or not that really makes sense anymore to continue having, I'm not sure if that's something that you all have.
Not actually associated with Boom Days, it was just presented there during the time of Boom Days.
The county permits that.
Okay,
And I have no idea whether they promoted it for this year or not.
so I guess then this turns into a comment for the county. I think it would be appropriate to, you know, really sit down with our community and ask if this makes sense. For us to continue having, I thought something like that was the thing that got brought up last time, but I wasn't too sure. But, you know, given the climate of our country and gun violence associated with it, I can see why many adults and children alike would feel uncomfortable that there is a reminder of ease of access. So for the county, I would like for that to be something that's discussed. Sorry that I brought it up during Boom Days. It's clearly not associated.
That's okay.
Councilmember Luna Leo, I think, Cisco, his concern was about the reenactments on the streets.
But he was also concerned about the gun show, that is true.
I think we decided that reenactments would be all be on stage of some sort.
Yeah.
And not allowed in the parade,
Yeah.
and also the announce.
Yeah, they announced.
We're not having any this year, we don't have a big enough stage to set up anything like that, so we took that off and forward and being concerned with other places.
And I thought that was a fine compromise for everything given, but the gun show still was supported, but thank you regardless.
Yeah. Any other comments?
I have a quick question. In terms of closures, you list Sykes Park, but I don't remember what Sykes Park being listed as part of a closure for Boom Days in the past.
Well, that's not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily the closure, we'll just be using Zach Park and continuing with the tent here that they'll have of the previous night of Main Street concert on Main Street.
Didn't realize
They'll
that.
keep that.
It's the first time I think I've seen it on the application, that's why I was
Yeah.
asking.
It's been last year where we had bands playing there.
Okay, and so to be bands playing there as part of, is it, the summer nights, is Ike's gonna be one of those nights?
Thursday the third.
Oh, before this.
And we partnered last year, because they do the entertainment, which is the bands in the bike park. So we partner with them and we do our tents and make it easy for them to do the transition in the next.
Okay, that's fine, just didn't know what that was. Another thing that came up is, I think that, Dan at Golden Borough talked about, and maybe you talked to Mark about it, but about the tent being right in front of their tables and stuff, and I didn't know what you guys had discussed. And
Yeah,
decided.
we're moving that tank. Yes, I talked with Dan directly,
Okay,
or actually indirectly through voicemails, and yeah, we'll be- he's very happy and thankful for that.
who's gonna be,
Makes sense.
who's gonna be unhappy?
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm sure.
You know where you're gonna put the tent, I guess.
It'll either be all the way north, so if anybody see there can look out at the car show and look towards the moon base, or it'll be on the other side.
Gotcha.
Exactly what he was asking for, so I propose we'll just put it on the other side of the wall and find a nice spot, so it's not in his way. You brought up the valid points.
Good, thank you.
You addressed that.
Mayor Pro Tem Green had a question.
Dana, yes, please.
Yeah, I was just in looking through the application and the listed emergency procedures. I saw that for minor injuries or medical inquiries, that part of the plan is to refer individuals to the urgent care clinic or St. Vincent's Hospital. And I think just for shaping people's expectations appropriately, Leadville does not have urgent care right now. We have St. Vincent's Family Health Medical Clinic, where you may or may not be able to get an appointment that day. And then we have the ER. So I think just in terms of talking to the staff and the people working with the public, just to shape their expectations more appropriately, I would strike the urgent care language.
Good catch.
Not a problem.
Any other questions for the Move Days Committee? Is there a bunch up here? Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You guys want to? Okay, next up, we have a conversation with city support of the Lebanon County Regional Housing Authority. Jackie?
Hi, Jane, Gillian, with the Lincoln Regional Housing Authority. So proposition 1, 2, 3, and remember it's in the ballot last November. And it has, and we want to try and capitalize on that funding opportunity. Several $100 million are going to be available through proposition 1, 2, 3. What I'm asking for tonight is city support for me to apply as the Lincoln County Regional Housing Authority on behalf of the city to opt into this program. And what that does is it opens up the ability for developers and organizations to be able to apply for funding, and they cannot apply for funding without you opting in. So if the project is happening within the city, they can't apply unless we have gone through this process. And what you are doing is you're pledging to commit to increasing the affordable housing baseline by 3% per year. And they have created a spreadsheet. Their website, and I can do it, but it's if you look at DOLA proposition 1, 2, 3, if they have a spreadsheet that calculates for Leadville and for Lake County, and it's going to be 8 units for each, so it would be 16 units per year. And if we don't end up building that many affordable housing, we just get put in that timeout. There's no real ramification for it. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to capitalize on that funding. So the county decided that they would do that, and I hope it will as well.
When do the 8 units have to be built? Is it in 2024?
So it's over 3 years,
Oh,
and,
okay.
and it can be, if we don't build anything until the third year, the third year, we build all of our units, then we're fine.
It would still be per year though, so if we build the third year, we have to have 24 units in the city, pretty close, okay. Is there a process for us, the city to opt in, or do you opt in for it?
So the idea is that I would opt in on your behalf.
Well, we could potentially, if we didn't want to for some reason, opt in on our own, but that wouldn't really make much of a difference.
I don't, it doesn't make a difference, I'm happy. So the regional housing authority opt in for us, what does everybody else think?
Is it only for 3 years at this point? So in 3 years, we would be saying, yep, we're all on board for building 24 units.
Yeah, and
And we would also try, there was a discussion when we talked to Connor Everson with Dola that we could do understanding where the city and the county partner together on this, so that any housing that's built within the city would count for both the city and the county, since most of the housing that we're going to be building will be likely in the city. And the county is, I think today, Gateway presented their 400, yeah, they're gonna build 400 units, and I think 75% of those are gonna be very, so I think we're gonna be okay.
Will affordable level meet the requirements
Yes.
of 123?
Yeah, because they, well, and
Only to go after that, there's no way they're gonna make that until without.
yeah, and Reed is also going to be pursuing it. The AMI levels are 100% for sale units and 60% for rental units.
which is incredibly competitive and affordable for our community.
Yeah, it would be if we could get there. I always worry about whether or not, can we actually meet that standard with the cost of living? That's just me being a little cynical. Back to the question of whether we want to allow, regional housing authority to opt in on our behalf. On 123, does anybody have any objection to that?
Will say, this is definitely one of the biggest changes that our state has made for affordable units and has committed funding over a long period of time. So even if we don't opt in now, there's potential to opt in the future, though that's not what I would advise. And it makes affordable housing a little bit more attainable, a little bit more realistic for our county. So I would hope that we all agree to let Jackie pass Prop 123.
I'm still not hearing any objections. If there are none, I think we will allow Jackie opt in for the city of Leadville.
I think I ever let Jackie.
Well, wait, so this is a discussion item? There's no, I think that in general for support, we've done it. So we don't actually have a vote in a discussion item, so I think if that's,
We can do a motion anytime we want. I mean, whether it's a discussion item or not, if someone in city council would like to propose a motion to allow the regional housing authority to opt in on behalf of the city, I don't know why we couldn't do that.
well, it's because it's not an action item. I think you did what you needed to do, as you said, if there's any objection and they're hearing no objection, I think you have the city's support. So I think what we're trying to do is if it's under an action item, that's when actually.
Any legal complications they're not being.
No, I think if I can channel Christiana here for a minute, the reason she would always like things to be in a resolution and a motion, and that way we have it documented. So what we can do is, if you're actually going to complete some type of an application, correct? When is the application due?
I was gonna start for July.
Okay, so what we can do is come back with a resolution and a copy of the application, and we can have a motion at that point. I mean, I think what we didn't want to do is Jackie requested to be on this agenda to bring this idea to you all, and I think hearing no objection, then we can proceed forward with the paperwork that's necessary to meet your deadline.
And you can apply. Even
And it
if,
doesn't require a resolution.
Okay.
The state isn't asking for one, it's just asking for you to give her direction.
Then that's done.
I think it's explicitly asked that.
Thank you very much. Okay, Jackie? Who is, the city support for Lake County Home Generation to apply for grant. Kristen?
Hi, Megan. Okay. All right, I'm starting to get a little tired. I've had a couple of nights in a row. So Jackie and I went to a conference a while ago, and there was a presentation about some grant opportunities, one of which was from USDA Rural Development. And they were really encouraging, folks in Colorado to apply for this grant that is due on June 28th. And so Jackie and I talked a little bit, and I came up with the idea that like maybe we could update the needs assessment, which is due for an update. Maybe we could explore the idea of inclusionary zoning again, because we haven't looked at that since 2019. And anytime you're doing any kind of inclusionary zoning that requires a fee in lieu, you have to have a study called a nexus study that like proves what the cost to the developer of providing a housing unit that is required by that policy would be monetarily, in case they want to opt out of actually building it and they want to pay you for it instead. So the nexus study is like your legal backstop to make sure you're not overcharging for that unit. And then there were a couple of other things that we probably put in that application, including some board governance and training for the Regional Housing Authority, and some more support for the Shabby Housing Trust. Homeownership education programs. And the reason we're putting multiple things in there is because the guidance we got from the USDA RD director was the more robust application that has like multiple strategies in it, the more likely it is to be approved. All that being said, this is a federal grant that is highly competitive. There's only 30 awards nationwide. I don't even know how likely it is we would be able to get this award. But I think what I'm asking of you all, I know IZ is like quite touchy. And so when I brought it to the Regional Housing Authority, they said, gosh, we'd really like to hear from City Council and Board of County Commissioners if they are all interested in exploring inclusionary zoning again, before we would wrap that into a grant application.
Thank you. I would like the Chafin to chime in a little bit. We're talking about incentive-based zoning as another tool in the toolbox. Chafin.
Sure. So from a planning perspective, there's a difference between inclusionary zoning and incentive-based zoning. So inclusionary zoning, is essentially the stick, and incentive zoning would be the carrot. So the Planning and Zoning Commission has been evaluating some recommendations from the Housing Coalition regarding housing variety, and it's going to take them on those proposed code amendments, and simply put, has been modifying them, working on those in work sessions. That has not yet come to City Council. It's not ready yet. Part of the recommendation right now the Planning and Zoning Commission is working on is an incentive zoning component. So in other words, allowing a developer or builder to increase their allowed density of units on their property in exchange for providing a certain portion of those units as affordable housing, as community housing. So that currently right now is what the city's Planning and Zoning Commission is working on, and there will be public engagement that will come to council before we do all of that. So there's a long way to go. That'll be this summer and this fall. But long story short, it is an incentive, not a requirement that we're looking at.
But it may be, as you asked for, they fleshed out possibilities in terms of the request, in different possibilities. Might make you more competitive.
May I just add one thing in my comment? Yes. One of the important things that we're looking at, the Planning and Zoning Commission is looking at, is if we're to do this code amendment and developer was to take advantage of that density bonus, that voluntary density bonus, if their requirement results in less than one unit, there it would make sense to have a fee in lieu option But right now, we don't have any way to require that fee in lieu. So what Christie is discussing would support that at a minimum, that fee in lieu portion of this incentive zoning. And in addition to that, that needs assessment supports this code amendment for incentive zoning.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that difference between inclusionary zone and incentive zone.
Also, I think, you know, Jackie and I are trying to get a phone call with EPS, who did our needs assessment in the past, to understand a little more what the data that might come out of this nexus study might be, like, if we were to explore it, and like how we could potentially use it in other ways, and like the county is really concerned about potential burden on their staff, like if there would be data collection burden on their staff, which I don't have the answer yet for, but I'm researching those things.
Okay. What does build generation need from us?
I just need to know, like, is this going to ruffle your feathers if we apply for this? Is this something you're interested in? Does it feel like not the right time? Is it okay to move forward? I think is, I'm general room.
I think, in the regional housing authority meeting where this came up. We do realize the need for the needs assessment update. And this grant is kind of marries that with the inclusionary zoning. And it's not something where Christie's asking for the grant to demand inclusionary zoning. She's just asking for the conversation to be had. So that's, I mean, is that right, Christie? That was kind of the gist of what we came up with at that meeting.
I'd love to see what comes out of the report.
Personally, have no issues with inclusionary zoning, whether it's the stick or carrot or both. I think the more the merrier, and any tools that we can use, we should. I think that's a smart way to play it, and really the only options we kind of have right now, given our economic status and not being able to just purchase a bunch of units and deed restrict them. So I am fully in favor of having those conversations and seeing what type of inclusionary zoning, because it is intensely complex. There's different types that make sense for us, that might not make sense for us. I would love to see a little bit more of a grounded approach of like, this is what makes sense for our community. This is the type of inclusionary zoning that does make sense. This is the type of inclusionary zoning we want to avoid. So I would love to have these conversations and have evidence-based decisions behind that to see, not just, yeah, let's make inclusionary zoning and it be 20% because we felt like it, right? So to me, this sounds great. This sounds like a great opportunity to get an evidence-based, you know, based on data, based on facts, idea of what inclusionary zoning could look like for a community, as well as potentially updating our much needed to be updated since 2018 needs assessment.
Okay, any other thoughts? Tracy, yes, please.
I totally agree. I think, you know, we need the data to make these decisions, and we don't have that kind of data, and this is the opportunity to gather that data and have an expert economic firm help us with those kinds of options. And also, our housing needs has completely changed since 2018. I think we can all agree that the pandemic has changed everything. And it's important to go back and revisit that. So I support this totally.
If I understand everybody correctly, no heartburn here on getting a report that would include an inclusionary zoning as part of it. I would love to see incentive-based zoning, which might be part of it. I don't know in terms of how they structure this feasibility study, but I would look forward to seeing what comes out of it. Were you okay with that?
you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, discussion regarding mayor's salary, we kind of beat this one to death. I think everybody has a pretty good idea. All we want tonight is to give staff direction on what direction do we want to go. And then, staff will bring us back that as an ordinance, which will go through a first reading and a second reading. And second reading will be a public hearing. I don't know where everybody is, we certainly, we're kind of all over the place last time we discussed it. So. Tracy, we'll start with you. Sorry.
Well, I missed the last discussion, but I believe that we should increase the mayor's salary because no offense, but we don't want just old people applying for a job because they're retired
Yeah,
and they can afford to do it. So,
no offense taken, I totally agree with you. So it's just to be clear. Chris,
And fully agree with that sentiment. I want to give anyone who wants to run the opportunity to have this as their job because it is a job. And to be fairly compensated for that. My gripe, as last time stated, is what is fairly and what roles will the mayor have? That's kind of where, that's where does it make sense that it's 40, does it make sense that it's 50 comes in? But yes, I fully agree that it should be increased to some capacity.
thank you very much. Dana?
Well, I think I shared some of my thoughts last time and they are pretty unchanged. While I appreciate the desire to open public office up to anyone, I do think we need to be realistic. And when we went to or tried to, or are in the process of going to a weak mayor system, we embraced the idea that the mayor would be essentially the city representative to the city municipal representative to the city population. And I think Greg is incredible and unique and just completely dedicated to this work. And I would not expect for another mayor to operate at this level. I'm not 100% sure that everything that Greg does is necessarily necessary to the job. And it reflects more on the quality or the person that Greg is, rather than I think what the job description would necessarily entail. So personally, I think the mayor should be a part-time position. I would rather direct city funds to hired positions that would be more vettable per chance in terms of skills. And so I think that rather than raising the mayor's salary, we should confirm that the mayoral position is part-time and leave the salary alone.
Thank you, Dana. Karen?
Well, I think I echo Dana in that I was questioning whether we had determined this was full-time or part-time position. With the understanding that we have a city administrator administrating. And so that would be the question. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just not all fully on board with increasing it greatly until we make a decision of whether it's full-time or part-time.
I would say that's not our decision, that it's state statute, unfortunately. So there's always going to be some risk involved, whoever's mayor. We adhere to state statute, but we have no ability to regulate that unless we're a home rule municipality. So just thought.
But we spent quite a bit of time talking through that. The last meeting is what I remember about whether it's a full-time gig or not a full-time gig. And that we know that you have been operating, as Dana said, in a full-time plus gig.
But there are no assurances.
And I think the answer to that in part is that the mayor's duties are set as the mayor said in statute and in our code. And how much someone applies themselves to that depends, I think, on the person, which is the hard part to quantify.
Which is true for city council as well, and any other elected official, really.
It's a really good point, as we have found. Tim,
I think I would find myself leaning more towards Dana's rationale. Keeping the salary the same. I mean, I agree with her that we sort of embrace going to a weak mayor system by having the city administrator, so. I agree with Dana in the way that maybe the mayor should be more of a ribbon cutter, maybe kisser. Handshaker.
maybe Shaver.
No.
That way. And invest more in our paid positions. So
Okay,
that's where I'm kind of standing right now.
thank you, Tim. Matt,
I share Shannon, Tim, and Dana's sentiment. It's, we've made a lot of investments here in the city with city administrator, our planning director, our human resources director, and we have other investments into our human capital here, our employees for the city of Leadville. And I feel that if the city administrator is running all of the day-to-day operations, that the mayor should be in a more part-time capacity and being remunerated as such. That being said, everybody here is dedicated to their community. However, both the mayor's salary and the city council's salary is one to be questioned. I don't know exactly your salary right now, Mayor. It's $30,000. So if it's part-time, I think that it may be about that, maybe a little bit more, just from a cost of living standpoint. If you're gonna be committed to your community, it has to make sense also that if it is part-time, that you're actually paid for it. Right, I mean, that's also it. So I don't know what the part-time salary is for the mayor. I don't think it's $72,000. I don't think it's $50,000. But it's probably somewhere where a part-time salary lays for somebody that has that capacity as a mayor, mayoral duties, whatever they may be. So part-time is my short answer.
So I'm inclined to agree, had it not been for the caveat that currently our city administrator is beholden to the mayor, not city council. From my understanding in code, we do not make any hiring decisions as to who the city administrator is. Am I correct in that, or?
That's incorrect.
So then who do we have the capability of dismissing and firing city administrators?
The answer is yes.
Okay, so given that clarification, I had understood that it was the mayor's, but I am fine with making that amendment of it being part-time. However, I think that there's still of importance to have someone. I know that we can't control this, but we have to be able to give them the ability to be able to show up. That's the best that we can really do. Present in our halls to administer if this person is doing a well enough job, because quite frankly, I could not tell you if the city administrator is doing well enough job. All I can mostly do is show up in my community, show up to our meetings, and then show up to these meetings. And make sure that I'm caught up on everything that could possibly be caught up on. That does not give me the ability to feel comfortable or staff satisfied with their leadership. I could not make that decision if I did not have someone here who worked here, who was active here, at least, even if it's part-time, just being present in the building in some capacity. And maybe that's an HR thing that we can figure out internally, like maybe an HR gives us a report about how our staff are feeling about leadership. not quite sure how it will all shape out, but at the end of the day, I feel like someone has to be here for city council, who's present, who understands how our workers, our employees are feeling for us to make decisions about anything, including leadership. I think someone has to be present, and if we can make that work with 30,000, I disagree. I think 35 would be a little bit more appropriate to be able to make it fully a part-time job. So that they can go half and half in each, considering that part-time jobs don't give you benefits. That makes more sense to me, but that's getting into the details, I guess. At the end of the day, I guess I would like to see some type of structure of employees have some type of way to report to someone who will report to us, that there's something going up with leadership, I guess. That's what I would like to see. That's what's important to me. And whether that's the mayor or not, I don't mind if it's a hired person. By all means, I would love for it to be a hired person if that made the most sense. But to me, that's what the mayor, in my mind, had played as a role, right? And if that was the system that we were gonna keep going with, then we need to make it possible for that mayor to at least be here that part of the time. And whether that's 30 or 35, I'm not sure.
I would like to ask Tracy,
Dan.
go ahead, Tracy, please.
Okay, I think Christian brought up a good point. Is offering the mayor full-time benefits a possibility? Because that could make a big difference.
At 30,000, I was offered benefits.
Okay,
I declined them because
but they are offered.
they were offered to me
Okay,
as a salaried city employee.
Okay.
And was regardless of it, I didn't need any of them. So.
but they are available.
They are available, and actually, it's something, actually, now that you mentioned it, I hadn't really thought about it, it's also a consideration, whoever's the next mayor, regardless of what you pay them, they may opt in. To the healthcare plan, or they could opt in, to the 457 plan, it's possible, right? But yeah, I have no clue who that's gonna be. But Tracy, do you feel like we have consensus at that point, at least on the base here?
I feel like I'm in the minority. I believe that it's really up to the mayor. If we pay them a decent salary, the expectation is that they are here, they're setting policy, they're doing oversight, and that can be a full-time job. So
I happen to wholeheartedly agree with you. However, I'm going to kind of stay in this conversation to the best of my ability. Dave, yes, please.
Yeah, I'm first of all, I'm not opposed to a small tweak to the mayor's salary. Like Christian said, I wouldn't care if it were 35 versus 30, but I did want to bring up the point that elected officials are routinely paid sort of phenomenally small amounts. Like our state representatives make $43,000 a year. Compared to, say, my husband, who is a hired state employee, makes more than the governor, whose salary is set as a percentage of some of the state justices. So just looking into what other mayors and other elected officials are paid, it's, like raising the mayor's salary to 50,000, for example, would be pretty astonishing in the setting of what elected officials are paid in Colorado. That's all.
I have to say, I didn't realize that. That's quite an interesting perspective. I would say I've been making $30,000 for 8 years. Been more than happy with it, but I have certain advantages that allowed me to be very happy with that amount of money. That having been said, I did the study on the value of money over years, and I don't know whether we want to go down that road or not. I think we need to give direction. I think we have consensus that we're going to treat this mayor as, call it semi-part-time. I don't know how to describe it, but part-time. And do we then adjust that $30,000 to the value of money, or adjust it at all? And if so, what is that number going to be? So some quick thoughts from everybody.
I do think to help the discussion along, I think the reason we're asking for guidance is If you want to keep it the same, staff does not need to draft any ordinance to bring back to you. If you want to change the salary, we can draft an ordinance and you can debate it and discuss the amount at the time the ordinance is presented to you. So I guess we're at that threshold right now where we just need to know, should we bring an ordinance back to change the salary? And if that's the case, we can put in a placeholder dollar amount that gets debated at some point. But at the point you get there, we just need to know tonight, bring back an ordinance changing the salary or not.
I say yes to that.
Sure, I'm open to it. That's, yes.
And
Did you call on me?
I did.
Okay, so, yeah, I would be in agreement with them.
No, great conversation. Thank you all very much. Staff, you can bring back an ordinance, and at which time we can, decide what that number needs to be.
So as a placeholder, it may just be the cost of living adjustment that the mayor calculated. That doesn't mean that's any value judgment on that. It's just the number to put in, or we could leave it blank.
I think that would be an appropriate start to the conversation.
I would say this, you can't extend that cost of living into the next term. Not allowed by statute. Whatever is assigned to elected officials, that's what they make during that term of office. Okay?
Is your term of office 4 years?
It was a second term of 4 years, yes,
4 years.
but we never made a change
Right, I had that.
before the second term. That's correct, it's 4 years. Okay, thank you very much. As I said, it's important now for people who may be considering running. They're still not gonna have a definite number, but they're gonna have a definite idea of how this position is gonna be treated. Okay, thank you. Next up, we have resolution 10 series of 2023 declaring a vacancy and an appointment of Ward 3 seat. Declaring the vacancy is one thing, filling that seat is another. We have 3 candidates who are here with us tonight. I would like to hear from each of those 3 candidates.
I get to vote.
Yes,
Yeah, nice.
So-
City council member.
the mayor's handing out, so just a little bit on the process, the mayor is handing out a card where each council member would write their name and their vote. We cleared this with our city attorney. We're going to pass those down to our deputy city clerk. For the one person who is virtual, we obviously can't do a hand ballot. She is going to text her vote to deputy city clerk. We're going to retain these. The clerk, a deputy city clerk will read the vote. And as it comes in.
And then the deputy city clerk will let us know, what the votes were.
Correct.
And so right now, I'd like to hear from 3 candidates. In no particular order, I'm going to pick on Jim first.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
You have to vote on resolution number 10 first. To declare it.
You're gonna do it all in one. So if you look at the motion, what you're gonna do is you're going to have the resolution, declare the vacancy, and then you're gonna fill the vacancy all in the one resolution. So you can hear from the candidates and that you will see in the proposed language in the resolution, it will fill in the name of the selected candidate.
Perfect.
Make sense?
So we hear from Jim, then we'll hear from Cisco, then Rebecca. That's okay.
Okay, as you can see on there, I'm retired military, so I just did bullet points on here. I can elaborate on those. I can answer questions from you. Or I can just sing a song, whatever you want.
Can you dance?
I can dance, not very well, but I enjoy myself. I'll just start talking, okay, Air Force, 20 years, who else was in the military? Okay, 20 years, 13 days and 47 minutes, and that means the next 2 years. Okay, the last position I had was at headquarters Air Force Training Command. I was the test director for the pilot candidate testing method, which we had thousands of the recruits coming through. And this eventually led to the drone pilot program. We tested them for certain criteria, working with the medical people and stuff like that. And what it was doing, we were setting up facilities around the world so we could look for pilots that weren't necessarily college graduates and officers. Looking at other militaries, we had seen that they had enlisted pilots, and it seemed to work pretty. Denmark is the first one that comes to mind. It worked pretty good. Other than that, I was in the operative test and evaluation, which what we did was we tested for contractual compliance on new equipment, headquarters training and managed purchasing. And then I was also the computer systems functional manager for the headquarters. I served 2 terms in Converse, Texas as a city councilman, a town that was about the size of Leadville when I got there. It is now expanded. What I bring from that is everything that we're going through here in Leadville, I've been through it. And sometimes we may not be making the right choices. I have the value of hindsight on that. You're talking about mayor's position. I've seen both sides of that. Having a city manager where 7 people have to get together to discuss that person's salary and continued employment can cause problems if that person has become friendly with the majority of the council, and that does happen. I've seen it in other towns also. The price of housing, the incorporation of annexing property outside the city limits, all those problems I've been through it. And all this is because all this stuff on here is because, as Greg knows, Mayor knows, when we join the military, we raise our hand and say we're going to serve. But when we get out, no one tells us to stop. And you're laughing. Yeah. I did Little League. I got into Little League and worked myself up to vice president and running the umpire school. I was the 2nd vice commander of the American Legion, which meant I was in charge of parties, which worked out good for my lifestyle at the time. But the American Legion is the only veterans organization chartered by Congress to look out for veterans once they've separated and are still active duty. And that's what we did. We visited the Veterans Hospital, Audie Murphy, and other things like that. I was the deputy director of the American Legion Riders, which was the motorcycle function. And, past master of the Masons here to watch Corinthian Watch number 35. At the current time, I'm the current worthy patron of the Eastern Star, which is the women's fraternal organization compartment section of the Masons. I've since been elevated to the state level, the state chapters, all the traveling around the state this year, visiting all of the Eastern Star chapters. I umpire Lake County softball. I'm supposed to be there now, but I'm not. But that's been enjoyable. I love the game, and I've got the best seat in the house behind the plate. If you see me out and about, people call me Blue. I've been doing it for 7, 8 years. I don't know what all blends together. And other community activities. Right now, I do the photography for the Ava Opera House. The Card Club, I'm the vice president of that. I'm on the board of directors with the Leadville Rock and Gun Club, which may answer some of your questions about the gun show. If you want to talk about it, we can talk about that. I don't know what else to tell you.
Okay, Jim, thank you.
Very well.
Does anybody have any questions? Oh, sure. Just a minute.
Would you tell us what brought you to Leadville?
I like small towns. And when I was down in Texas, I met a woman from here. And it's like a movie. If you got an hour, I can tell you how we met.
So the country song?
It could be. It could be. My grandmother's not in the song, but we can mix it. And so I came up here in February of 2013 to visit, because she knew that I didn't like cold weather. I went to high school in Alaska, I worked in Europe, exercises in the wintertime are miserable because it's so damp. It snowed every day that I was here. But it was pleasant, it was dry, and I enjoyed this little funky town. It's slowly changing from that, but anyway, that's why I moved up here. And I came up, I got here the first Monday in June 2013. I worked for the Forest Service. They said, "Oh, it'll take you years to get on there." I gave them a resume. I was the first one on the list. They called me. I came up here. That was a seasonal job. Worked over there where Councilman Max worked. You still over there? Yeah, and I just like it. There's things about it that are changing that I don't like, but that's life. I mean, I've lived in small towns quite a bit, and this happens. What's going on now is not unique to Leadville. It's all over the country. The little towns I used to visit on a motorcycle in Texas, 90% of them are going through this. But yes, I came up here chasing a woman, and we got married. I gotta show you this, I got to everybody. We got married out on Mount Mass. We hiked up there, we were gonna go down for a rally.
It went away.
See that? We hiked up to 12,000 feet. We were gonna get married in Texas on a motorcycle without it. Click again. Send it to you. And logistics wouldn't work out. My friend that I ride with, the chaplain, someone in his family died, so we were sitting down and she goes, "Want to just go up on the mountain?" They thought I couldn't do it because I'm living in San Antonio. Well, the weather up here has never bothered me. I love it. And so we hiked up, and James Duke, so if you remember him, he performed the ceremony for us. And he keep telling me it's not time to kiss her yet. I love that woman, and that's why I'm here. And we want to stay here. Her condition is she finally put in her retirement papers. Next June, she'll be done. It's a job she loves. She designs the trails on the 14ers. I've gone up there with her. She's taken me places in this state that you wouldn't believe. And I can't take you there because we don't want anyone to know about it. But it's a beautiful state. It's a beautiful town. And I love it here. But if they don't get a swimming pool, she's moving. That's like everything.
Thank you, Jim. Any other questions for Mr. Evans?
Thank you
Very much. Cisco, he's a tough act to follow.
Right?
No, it's not. You got a whole bunch of
Mayor Bobby, City Council, and city staff, thank you so much for considering me in this matter tonight, and thank you for your service to our community. Civic service and civic engagement is tremendously important to me, and I really appreciate that you invite that as well as the other applicants tonight. I appreciate that they want to tune into this beautiful place we live and help guide it into the next 2 years. I served with you all for a year, and that was a real honor. I'm also very involved, as you know, in a lot of things in our town, from affordable housing initiatives to childcare, out of school time programs, and youth outdoor programs. I care a lot about this community. I care about my children and their friends. I care about my neighbors. I care about the people who make this community, this county, and the city run. And I want to do my part to help keep this a really healthy place to live. I think my priorities are twofold. First of all, last month, Headwaters Economics published a report. I don't know if you saw it, but I hope you do. And it's called The Amenity Trap: How High Amenity Communities Can Avoid Being Loved to Death. And I've been tuned into Headwaters Economics for a long time because they study and report on amenity economies, especially in the West, especially in the Intermountain West, like we are. And this was the best report I've read about holistically, what can we do to really leverage the economy we've become and we are becoming and maintain the integrity of our community? And the outline did really nice. It's complicated, but like the previous speaker said, we're not alone. Lots of places are dealing with this. Lots of places have found solutions. And I really enjoy researching that and tuning into what other communities are doing. This, I would say, is my priority, to help our community be one where the people who put down roots here can continue to live here and thrive, and the people who want to come here can, and that the critical services and our economic sector can continue to be vibrant without pushing people out. Because I think our economy will be vibrant, but at what cost? And I want to make sure that we can do everything we can to keep this a great place to live. My second priority is to maintain the tenor of respect that we have in our community leadership. I've been so grateful and really appreciative of the tenor of respect that has been on this council and in much of our community conversations. I don't think we should take that for granted. I see a lot of communities where there can be a lot of animosity, tense moments, or even anger. Certainly we disagree sometimes. Certainly we have impassioned opinions sometimes. But I can commit to certainly maintaining that respect and looking for that in others so that we can collaborate to do this big work that we need to do for our community. That respect extends also to the members of the public who we interact with, the people we represent, and I hold up very high the ability to both listen and hear, and also be ready to explain in terms that folks can relate to what's going on in our city, because it's hard to pay attention to everything. People have lives, people are busy, and I think it is part of our responsibility to help be ambassadors of what's going on, and also to hear and be ambassadors for our community. So with that said, I welcome any questions.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Parker?
I mean, I'm moving again soon.
But also makes the new one, so. Do what I can. Not least.
Any other questions for Cisco? Dana, anything? You can.
No
grill.
questions, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Next up, Rebecca.
I'm Rebecca Thomas, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight. Very interested in this position. You have my letter of interest, you have my resume. I really don't want to go over that again, since you have it in front of you, but I kind of like to tell you a couple of stories about my past work in Leadville, which I think will give you a little bit better idea of who I am and why I'm so interested in this position on city council. Just have a very strong appreciation for the power of local government and what local government can do to steer our community in the direction the community wants to go. So if you haven't had a chance to look at my background, I worked for the Environmental Protection Agency for about 30 years, and one of my projects was here in Leadville. So I started working in this community, probably started in the late 90s, and worked here through 2007, 2008, something like that. When I first came up here, the project was very controversial. Conversations were very difficult, to the point of being extremely adversarial. Some of the council members may remember that. I feel like we were in the paper almost every week. But we did the work, a lot of persistence, conversations were difficult, but ultimately working together, federal government, state government, county government, and city government, we were able to come up with solutions that worked for the community. Probably one of the most difficult ones that we've done is coming up with a cleanup plan in residential areas. And again, it probably took about 2 years, strong government working together. We came up with a plan. I took the plan back to our federal office in Denver, and it was rejected. So I was put in a very uncomfortable position of coming back to the community and saying, you know, I know we all agree to this. I think it's a great plan. You think it's a great plan. It's been rejected by my office. And the community, the city and the county really pulled together at that point to support what we had come up with together. And the city and county demanded an opportunity to make their voice heard. And it worked, and it was just so inspiring for me to see what local government can do. So within a couple of months, county commissioners, the mayor, I was on an airplane all back to Washington DC. We presented the plan and it was ultimately accepted. I can't say that my headquarters in Washington liked it, but it was accepted. So I really came to appreciate how strong the local government can be in devising something that works for the community. So from that, I learned one, persistence, right? Conversations can be difficult, conversations can be adversarial, but you show up, you do the work. And the second is that strong collaboration among all the parties. Even if there's disagreement, if you can collaborate, you can come up with a plan and move forward. So that's one story. Another story I want to tell you also from my work here at EPA. Couple of, I think, really great community projects were happening during my tenure. One was the creation of the soccer field down by the rodeo grounds, and the other one was the creation of the Mineral Belt Trail. And the federal government, EPA, had very small roles to play in those projects. And I think what I learned there is sometimes the best thing government can do is recognize a good project and then just do its best to get out of it. Because I think a lot of times a government can really interfere and slow things down. It doesn't. So that's how I was first introduced to the community of Leadville. Like I said, I think my work here ended in about 2008. I took the lessons I learned here and went on to work in other mining communities in Colorado and also Montana, but always maintained an appreciation and love for Leadville. My husband and I bought a house here in 2009. And we split our time between here and Denver. We have 4 children, so Stuart and I were still working, the children were still in school. And then Stuart and I were fortunate to retire about 3.5 years ago. And since then, Leadville has been our home. Full disclosure, we still have a townhouse on the west side of Denver. All 4 of our kids live in Denver, and we've got a 4-year-old granddaughter who's the real draw. So we spend about 3 weekends a month down in Denver. And more recently in the community, we've been involved. My husband Stuart was on the board of C4 for about 7 years. He just stepped down a couple of months ago. And more recently, we've gotten involved with St. George's Church and are very interested in the renovations that are planned or proposed there. So we're taking the lead on helping out with fundraising and grant writing. Grant writing for that church. Any questions based on what I put in the letter of intent or the stories I tell or anything?
Any questions for Rebecca?
All right, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. At this time, not really time for discussion, but rather time to consider people who have applied. And I have to say, I'm really tickled with that with 3 quality candidates who have stepped up and volunteered, as it were, to be on city council. So thank you all 3 very much. At this time, we will vote and pass our votes down to the city clerk.
And I don't know if that's around.
Oh, Dana, I'm sorry, I didn't notice your hand was up.
You sure?
Yes, I just wanted to let all of the candidates know that this year there'll be another vacancy on Ward 3 because I am term limited and will not be running for re-election. So I believe starting in August, there is a packet to pick up so that you could run for the second Ward 3 vacancy in this year's election.
What a great insight. Okay, thank you very much. He's renting an airplane.
It's gonna fly. Football.
Oh, I get it.
Okay. And Councilmember Green, we did receive your vote. You can shuffle them around once you've gotten them so that we don't forget you.
Yeah, okay.
No, you don't know who's gonna be, except the one that's full
Yeah,
of like people.
one vote for Mr. Third. One vote for Ms. Thomas. Another vote for Mr. Third. Another vote for Ms. Thomas. Another vote for Ms. Thomas. And another vote for Ms. Thomas. And another vote for Mr. Third, leaving 4 votes for Ms. Thomas and 3 votes for Mr. Third.
Well, thank you very much. Ms. Thomas, you will be our new seated city council member. Before you come up, we have a big thank you for Councilmember Pregency.
Are you commenting on my size or the color? This is your big thank you. Thank you. Would be smallest.
Thank you. And I'd like to just say a few things that again, council. Serving here has been an absolute pleasure the last 2.5 years. All of you are in business, just community members in general, and we've done a lot in the last 3.5 years, from affordable housing, to hiring city administrator, really focusing on this organization. I think is a big piece. We have a paving fund, we have sidewalks, plow plan, like an actual snow removal plan, Tim Hill, if you remember that back in the day. We survived COVID together, and to be perfectly honest, with this one, I am vacating my seat is I have to focus on my family and everything else that's going on in my life, so I won't look back at this with anything but positive memories. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Can we clap now?
I'm gonna shortcut this a little bit, but it says in our resolution number 10 of series 2023, City Council hereby confirms the resignation of Council Member Max Borgensi, declares a vacancy in the office of City Council Member for Ward 3 as of June 6, 2023, and determines to fill that vacant Ward 3 seat by appointment. The City Council appoints Rebecca Thomas to serve on the City Council, whose term shall commence on taking the oath of office, which we have here, and continue until the term of office of a successor elected at the next regular election on November 7th, 2025. So you're in for the long term. Has commenced as provided in CRS section 31-4-106 and CRS 31-4-108 2B. Thank you very much. At this time, we will undergo the oath of office.
Thank you.
You forgot to scoot your chair in.
If you would stand by the here, please. And raise your right hand. Say aye.
I,
Rebecca Thomas,
Rebecca Thomas,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
Constitution of the State of Colorado,
and the municipal code of the City of Leadville,
and the municipal code of the city of Leadville,
and faithfully perform the duties
and faithfully perform the duties
of Leadville City Council member
of Leadville City Council member,
upon which I am about to enter.
on which I am about to enter.
Congratulations. If you will sign both of these, and then I will, one is for you and one is for our records.
Fabulous.
That one's for you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And at this time, you may be seated.
Okay.
And Jim and Cisco, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
I have, so I'm tired, so I get treated worse than this.
Thank you.
Keep up the work.
Max.
It's gonna be hard.
This is fast.
Okay, at this time, you go now.
It's kind of hard to follow.
It really is. Isn't it?
I mean, there's not, there's nothing, we have lots of significant things on the agenda, so it's just big night.
Anyway, this time we have a presentation, of Summer Nights at the Sites. Music in the Park, the temporary use program.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Nancy Bailey, Director of the Leadville Main Street Program. And I just wanted to give a special shout out to our staff. I've been in this role for now 3 years, and nothing would happen on Main Street without the support of city staff. So I just want to shout out to Lori and her team. There is no difference in our application between this year and last year. We are, the only difference is that we'll be hosting 2 events, and by the way, welcome to the City Council. It's very nice to meet you. I didn't realize that was gonna, that's amazing. Easy, I like it. This year, we will be having our first concert on July 6th. And the next one being August 3rd, and we'll kick off our Boom Days weekend. We did the same last year. And again, nothing will change. We will have a beer garden with a qualified, competent bartender that will be checking IDs like we did last year. We will have wristbands. We will have guardrails and barriers, no alcohol, outside of the park area. And unless anybody has any questions, that's about it. That's this year's concert.
I don't have any questions, I just have a comment. Last year was delightful. The whole point of the Main Street program, of which where you have led us well for a couple of years now, is to re-energize our downtown, reinvigorate it, beautify it. And I just feel really good about having these events in our downtown, so.
And if staff may say something, Nancy and I were discussing, this is her 2nd year, so this is the 2nd annual summer nights, in the park. And we would probably next year, unless you guys see some problems, be asking for a longer 3-year permit. But this being the 2nd year, we really wanted to check with you guys, see if you saw anything that could be fixed from last year, or if it was pretty non-impactful. And all the agencies have also already sent back their approvals, so we do have all agencies' approvals.
Any questions on city council about Summer Nights at Science?
I just have a comment. I think it's wonderful.
Yes.
I attended a couple of the events, last summer and everything went according to plan.
We're excited, the Live Main Street program is excited to incorporate these events into our annual programming, so this will be our something that will be included in our annual events. And I think it's a really nice addition to Main Street. And just the two shameless plugs, community cleanup is this Saturday. This is a collaborative effort from probably everybody in the room here, but specifically, Cloud City Conservation, C4, Emily, Adam Bashar, for the Tourism Panel Visitor Center and Main Street. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. We're celebrating the anniversary for C4. But other than that, and then, flowers will be beautified happening, hopefully next week if the hail doesn't spike them up in BB. So we can talk to Glenn today. So we will, fingers crossed on that, but looking forward to a great summer and I appreciate all of your support.
I would have to say, we could use a second trailer. Next Thursday, we're picking them up next Thursday. You do, never mind, thank you.
Nothing for me. Thank you. Have a great evening. And I gave Hannah some, all of our poster flyers, and we'll be passing them all around town. All of you there. Thank you for your support.
This time to do the discussion on the council's part, regarding, summer nights is nice. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion, please.
All those that approve temporary use permit for Ludlow Main Street program. Will host the second annual summer nights at sites, music in the park on Thursdays, July 6th, and August 3rd, 2023, from 5 to 8 p.m. with the attached findings.
Moving on 9 seconds.
Is there any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Littleton? Yes. Mayor Lovey?
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Green?
Yes.
Councilmember Grant?
Yes.
Councilmember Luna,
Yes.
and Councilmember Hill.
Yes.
Thank you, Nancy. We're looking forward to it.
Congratulations.
Next up, ordinance number 3, series of 2023, an ordinance repealing and reenacting chapter 17.44 of the Leadville Municipal Code concerning the regulations governing the city's national historic landmark overlay district. This is first reading.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, my name is Chase Lachance. I'm the planning director for the city of Leadville. And this ordinance, if adopted, will make certain amendments to the municipal code regarding the national historic landmark overlay district. These amendments really have 3 important components. The first would be that it would require exterior alterations and additions to structures, and as well as new commercial construction, all to be subject to a certificate of appropriateness requirement, whether administered administratively or through a public hearing process. The second component would be require reapplications for demolitions that have previously been denied to just be subject to the current code requirements at the time of reapplication. And then the third component would be, this is really a housekeeping item, would be to allow to clearly authorize site visits to properties that have a pending COA application, so that staff can provide an accurate report for a public hearing.
To clarify, that has to be with the permission of the landlord.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but by submitting an application, the landowner would be providing their authorization.
That's the first I've ever heard of that.
Yeah, I don't know if we've discussed that,
I don't think so.
that particular point. So I can elaborate on that, I'll come back to that, so.
Okay, thank you.
So the progress of this so far is that the city council is receiving these recommendations from the Historic Preservation Commission. The Historic Preservation Commission has been working on this for a couple of years now. City council has had two work sessions regarding these proposed amendments. The first was with the Historic Preservation Commission in a joint work session, and then the second was a city council work session all by themselves. Since the last city council work session, there have been 2 public open houses The purpose of those open houses were to educate the public on the proposed amendments and to receive comments. And then there are revisions that have been made to these proposed amendments, and those revisions are included in your packet as highlights. And then I'll go through those amendments tonight. So again, these are amendments since you've seen this last. So if you would like to follow along with me, I'm on page 53 of your packet. I don't think your packet is numbered, but it's page 53 of the PDF. And again, these proposed revisions are highlighted. So in my memo to the council, I'm kind of breaking down these proposed revisions since you last saw this. The first comment that we received, the staff received at the work session, the council work session, was regarding the requirement in order for a demolition to be approved, that the applicant demonstrate an effort to sell the structure to an owner who would not be demolishing the building in order to save that building from demolition. Staff does not find that that's an appropriate example or to meet that requirement. And so staff is fully comfortable with removing that requirement to demonstrate the applicants tried to sell the structure. So that is on page 53 of the packet to see that change highlighted. The second and third comment that was received at the work session were very related to each other, very similar. This was regarding this relationship between partial demolition and modifications to existing structures. So an example would be if someone has a historic home and there is an addition on the back, regardless of when that addition was added, whether 100 years ago or 20 years ago, and someone proposing to demolish that let's call it a non-historic addition to the historic building in order to add let's say an upgraded new addition. So that example project that I just described would include both partial demolition and an exterior alteration and an addition to the structure. So the council, I guess, directed staff to look in and see if we could provide opportunity to clarify situations like that. Right now, our current code only has a definition for demolition, does not break it down into partial and total demolition. So staff began to address this comment. And then going back up, the other comment was that was provided at the work session was that there needs to be more clarification on what is allowable for a partial demolition. So in order to address these comments, starting off, we are recommending a definition for both partial demolition and total demolition. As I mentioned, right now, we just have one definition for demolition. And so you'll see, as I have highlighted on the screen, and this is pretty straightforward. We're just providing those two definitions. All right, where this rubber really starts to hit the road is on this next page of this memo. We're having separate review criteria for both total demolition and partial demolition. So right now, or what is proposed is the demolition criteria for approval that is in the code right now would be the same criteria that we would use for total demolition. But we would introduce new criteria for approval for partial demolition. So if you look at what's highlighted on the screen, the number 2A and B for the review criteria for partial demolition, this is very similar to what's already in the code for 4B and 4C. Is everybody with me so far? Okay. Well, the really important part of this is under review criteria for partial demolition, what's highlighted in red under number 1. So criteria to demolish, going back to the example that I used, that non-historic addition to add something to the property and modify the property. The criteria would have to be met that partial demolition is required for the preservation, restoration, or rehabilitation of that property. So the key word here is really restoration. I'll get to that. But currently, we do not have a definition for preservation, restoration, or rehabilitation. So looking at other cities, most cities are modeled after the Secretary of Interior standards. Ours is very similar to that. Currently, the Secretary of Interior standards, and so this is under the National Park Service regulations for historic preservation, has definitions for all three of those terms, and we currently do not. So there's opportunity to introduce those definitions into our code. This is really important because most projects are going to fall under this rehabilitation category. The example that I mentioned would fall under the rehabilitation category. So what the staff and the Historic Preservation Commission are proposing is to introduce these three definitions that would provide some guidance for partial demolition, particularly rehabilitation. So if you look at the definition for rehabilitation, there's some key words here. So if we read this, it's making possible compatible use. I'm just paraphrasing here, for the repair, alterations, additions, while preserving those character defining features. So this is the really key language. So if we kind of back up here and take this from the top, if someone was to propose an addition or exterior alteration or propose an addition or exterior alteration, then they would be required, that would be classified as partial demolition because partial demolition will be part of that project. And that demolition could be approved if that compatible use, whether it was through the addition or the alteration, preserves the character defining features while it makes possible, this use of the property that's proposed. So everyone with me so far? This is getting very technical, but this responds to that comment. Okay. So that's the most important part of this. Preservation, definition for preservation. This is really a type of project that is protecting and stabilizing something that is falling into repair. So this is probably not most projects that we're going to receive applications for. This would be, a project where they're doing ongoing maintenance. This is not where they're doing extensive replacement or they're doing any type of new construction. Exterior additions would also not be part of this. So the example would be if someone's has a house that has a historic home that has a cracking foundation. The home needs to be lifted up, a new foundation, concrete foundation needs to be put in. Maybe it was just on mud before, maybe it was on rock. That would fall into a preservation project. All right, there's no demolition necessarily that's part of that, the historic structure or the character defining features. Restoration would be, and this is the example of this would be if the city of Leadville was proposed to restore one of its buildings like City Hall. We're taking it back to a place in time. It's more kind of like that museum approach to historic preservation than these other two types of definitions. All right, so that is how staff and the Historic Preservation Commission are proposing to respond to those comments and trying to provide some clarity for partial demolition and how partial demolition would relate to projects like additions and alterations. So council's already listened to me kind of go through the proposed amendments from top to bottom at previous two work sessions. So I could certainly address any questions. There are other minor technical amendments that are included in these proposed red lines in your packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions about those. But other than that, I just wanted to really focus in on the changes since you last saw this. But overall, this is absolutely something the staff is recommending. These amendments, the staff finds that these are extremely important for maintaining, providing the city an opportunity to maintain the character of our city. Planning and Zoning Commission will have an opportunity to review this next week. It's required per code that any amendment to Title 17, which is our zoning code, which is where this historic preservation code is nested. Any change to Title 17 is required to go through a public hearing process with the Planning and Zoning Commission. That will happen next week. And the plan, this will return back to the council if adopted tonight on first reading for a second reading later this month. So with that, staff does recommend that the city council adopt this ordinance on first reading and schedule second reading for a date certain. That would be June 20th, and the public notice requirements for that meeting have been met. This is first reading, so this is not a public hearing. I have received one written comment letter that if the council would like me to, I can read that in the record. I received that today, so it's not included in the packet. that's it from staff. I can answer any questions.
You should read the letter.
Read the letter. Okay.
I would like to hear the letter, and I'd like to know if anybody in council chambers has any desire to speak. Even on first reading at this point, but let's read the letter first.
Okay, and I'll just paraphrase, if that's all right. I think that'd be best. This is from Matt Bullock, and you know, Bullock Construction, he's a contractor builder here in Leadville. He has two points that he would like to communicate, and I'd like to preface this, I'm very thankful for his comment letter, because this is exactly the kind of comments that staff and the Historic Preservation Commission were looking for in the open houses, and the Historic Preservation Commission has communicated to staff that they feel like they did not receive these type of comments. So this is what we were looking for. So I want to communicate that. So Matt's first point is that narrow infill lots need creative roof lines to mitigate snow. So he's talking about infill construction. Traditional steep roof that's close to an old house could destroy the integrity of the old structure. Flat roofs, if they're built correctly, can allow for snow storage and usable space on a small lot. His customers would like to have hot tubs and barbecue areas on the roof. So let's break this down. But Matt's first comment is regarding infill construction. And in response to that, I did let Matt know that we do have infill design standards that are not proposed to change. So in other words, nothing in this proposed code amendment would affect the code or design standards for new infill construction. Matt's second comment was regarding old backyard sheds. He says customers want a garage with an apartment above and a rooftop deck. They would like a warm garage to charge their electric vehicles. If old sheds become untouchable, this would be impossible. And he is thanking staff and the city for the consideration and for the hard work we put into this. Responding to that, if I may, there is code criteria for demolition of structures. And that is including your packet tonight, and most of that is not proposed to change. Thank you.
I have one question along the lines of, I know currently we have no code or ability to dictate any accessory type dwelling units, but having it be a prominent strategy that is used across mountain towns to kind of combat housing and affordable housing, and it potentially being something that we would do. I don't think that this code really influences it, but is there a chance that, other than obviously having to go through the process of applying, that this code could potentially negatively impact that? I didn't see anything that would, but
I think probably where that really comes to fruition is an existing historic secondary structure, like a garage or an old carriage house, and someone wanting to perhaps convert that to an accessory dwelling unit, whether with a unit above or whether within a garage itself. So that's probably most likely the situation we would find ourselves in. And so I guess I have this actually on the screen right now. If we were to, apply these current definitions, and I'm just speaking generally here, if someone were to take an existing old shed, garage, carriage house, etc., and they were to propose a project that were to convert that to an ADU, I would interpret that as rehabilitation, because they're making this a compatible use for the property. And so then when it just gets down to, are there character defining features? For one, is that accessory building historic? And are this subject to code criteria? And if it is, then are there character defining features of that, like the gable roof, like the rectilinear building form, like the facade of that, maybe it has the old barn doors or something. If those character defining features could be maintained while making that being converted, and there's probably some cost saving opportunities there also. Then I think it could potentially meet the definition of the rehabilitation, and therefore be approved.
and that's what I had understood. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not over my head.
Right.
Thank you.
So it'd still be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, easy, but in the off chance.
Any other thoughts or questions?
I know I'm very late to the conversation, but I got a couple of questions and they've already been addressed, just cut me off and I'll catch up. One had to do with schedule, and I believe I read in there, generally I'm very supportive, but I read about schedule, and I think within 7 days of an accepted application, a decision has to be made so that the property owner can move forward on construction.
Is this for an insubstantial?
Yes.
Yes, that's, yeah, okay, that's
Okay, and
intentional.
I just wonder if that's, how realistic that is. I mean, I hope it is, but it's gotta go to the commission and then come to city council, right?
For an insubstantial, so it would be an administrative decision. And I would say right now, staff has the capacity to process administrative COA applications, insubstantial applications within a 7-day period. And I have to check the language, but I believe that's upon the date of complete, is determined to be complete. So once someone submit the complete application, it's a week to process that.
That's the way I read it too.
Yeah.
And then is someone on the commission a structural engineer or architect, or do they use the fee associated with the application to hire, contract that out?
So I think the situation where that would present itself would be if someone's proposing to demolish a structure. And they have to meet the criteria that it's structurally unsound, then at that point, the city would require the applicant to provide a letter from a licensed, an engineer licensed in the state of Colorado stating that the structure was unsound. So that would be where the engineering piece would come in. We have various trades on the commission, but it's that no engineers, but that requirement is not met on the HPC side. It's met through like a consultant who provides a letter to the city on the applicant's behalf.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. You talked about the infill guidelines. Are those based on Department of Interior guidelines? Are infill guidelines that we currently use?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's all I need to
Sure,
answer.
yes.
And I'm still a little nervous about this permission to inspect, and you say it's part of the application. I would want to be assured that it is crystal clear, because I've always, and it was just my mistake, I always assumed those were two different things. The application to do whatever work they want to do, especially in a demolition situation, and the permission from the landowner, I always assumed those were two separate things. So first of all, correct me if I'm wrong, and second of all, assure me that it's going to be crystal clear to someone filling out that application that they are also giving permission for their premises to be inspected.
Okay, let me dive in.
All right,
For some reason, I actually thought it was, we had to have.
well,
that
Chapin,
right.
I'm sorry, before you dive in.
Yeah.
It's 8 o'clock. Let's take a quick 5-minute break and then we'll let you dive in.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll let you catch your breath. Here with everybody? Okay.
So we're talking about explicit versus implicit. Those two things, implicit, that they're good. And not actually.
It's. Let me.
Yeah, let him look it up and then I think we can, I'm trying to find it. Is it? But it should be red line.
I wasn't sure why you for inspections. In the case of,
Okay, sorry, we were
They can
muted.
hear now.
Sorry.
oh, thank you. Okay, we're gonna get started again. We had advocated to clarify the consent portion of this ordinance change.
What I have on the screen is the portion of this proposed ordinance that is, it's just a proposed addition. And it does include language with consent of the applicant.
Okay.
And so I would,
Can we say written?
sorry,
Could we put written right there?
sure. Right, what I have not had time to research, this, like I mentioned, this ordinance is nestled within the zoning code. And it's standard planning practice, and so I want to continue to research this within the zoning code, to see if there, when someone submits an application for a property. And staff has to provide a report for a public hearing, staff goes to that property and inspects, if they go onto the property, not everything is viewable from the right of way, so that's standard planning practice. I don't know if there's something else nestled in the zoning code that provides that authorization with just when the application is submitted. But clearly in front of you, this requires, this is proposed to require written.
And you're saying it would be a checkbox in the application.
I think we can do that.
Okay, well, no. I'm still not entirely comfortable with that. I'm just thinking, Anthony Paul, City Council, that I would like for it possibly, if it's part of the application process, okay, I get it, that really streamlines the process. Make it its own separate sheet. That's just a suggestion.
What are your concerns?
My concerns are that people check off boxes all the time. And that they may be checking off a box that they didn't really pay attention to. And that worries me in terms of the consent to enter their property.
Isn't that onus on them to read what they're signing?
The answer, of course, is, every contract is saying.
And clarification, this is not for the interior of the property. This is not
Right.
going inside the building. We don't regulate the inside of the building. With this
On
code.
demolition, we do ask to go inside the,
I
like
thought
the
that
shed.
was the whole
It was,
point of this.
it was
I thought
because of
was
those sheds with the
be able to go
wallpaper.
inside of a property.
The
that was-
demolition,
that
it was-
asking to be demolished.
That could be clarified. I mean, I would, I would, I would think that this code section right here would. Could probably be stronger if it clarified both interior and exterior, if that's the intent. If you want to have the authorization to go inside the building. But the historic preservation code does not apply to the interior of the building.
Fair enough. Maybe there's no change to be made. I'm just trying to argue the point that the idea of consent, to inspect somebody's property just makes me a little nervous, that's all. I don't know if anybody else agrees with that. This is first reading. We can possibly at second reading see if there are changes that need to be made. I don't know.
Well, I think that the intent of the code is that we so I think not everything has to be codified. I think the intent of the code is that we have consent of the applicant. I think your concern is how do we obtain that consent, which I think is an administrative decision. And on the break, I said, we're not going to make this a rental car agreement where it's buried and it isn't clear. I think what we take away is you're wanting to make sure the applicants are clear that they're giving consent.
That's
With
all.
that, I don't think we need to make changes in the code. I think what we can do is just make it clear when we're in the process administratively, whether it's in the application or elsewhere, that we're making sure. I think it's the best interest of the city that we make it clear that we're getting consent from the property owner.
With their initial after they check the box, maybe?
In a retina scan.
If I was processing it, I would ask for written consent.
Well, I think the answer to that is if you want to have, if you wanted to have an application approved and there wasn't sufficient information before the approving body to understand the situation, then you might not get your application approved. I think that's kind of the point, is we're trying to gather the information necessary. So you could.
If you don't get consent, you probably won't get.
Well, you could leave plenty of boxes blank on an application as well and not give us sufficient information. We probably follow up with you to try and get that information. I guess what I'm saying is, if,
Check all the boxes.
right, I would say if an applicant is not providing us sufficient information to process their application, then it's gonna be difficult for us to.
I think I'm gonna be okay with this, but I'd sure like some clarity on second reading, if that's okay.
Sure.
Any other thoughts?
I have had my
so-
hand up for so long,
Oh, really? Is your hand tired?
really tired.
I'm sorry, Dana, please.
Okay, so first of all, just to follow up on the discussion about consent, you know, like as a physician, I'm pretty familiar with consent forms. And I would definitely not have a checkbox approach. Rather, I would have a separate sheet, like you suggested, Mayor, that says that they consent to, in, you know, like this kind of external review of your property, you know, possibly internal if you're asking for a complete demolition, and that the applicant will be notified about the time of that visit. And I would have it as a completely separate form. That's just my medical legal opinion. But the reason I actually had my hand up, Chapin, is there's a couple places in here that ask the applicant for 7 copies of a fairly substantial amount of information. Is that one for each member of the HPC?
That might be a bit of an old school approach. We do most of this digitally, so perfectly fine with if we want to move things along into the digital age. With requiring only one copy, including one hard copy and or PDF.
I've been kind of enjoying the 19th century.
Well, I guess I think that would be wise to update that. But the second part to that is there's a lot of other places, not only in this ordinance, but in others where we've added some flexibility by saying things like the city administrator or their designee, or, you know, or the city planner or their designee. You know, the population or the you know, the member count of the HPC does change from time to time as people leave. And so I think either updating it with, like, you know, one hard copy and, you know, a digital copy to be distributed, or you know, copies for each sitting member of the HPC. Just so we don't get hung up in specifics. That seems like a semantics issue, but I don't know.
Sure, that sounds good to me. If I could respond to the first comment. So regarding the staff's authorization, the consent of the property owner into the property, whatever we do here, we want to be consistent throughout the Title 17. So currently, if someone submits a conditional use permit application, a major site plan application, staff is going out to the property, photographing the property, taking measurements, analyzing the property, and then putting that information into a staff report for the public hearing for planning and zoning commission and then for city council. So that's already happening, and that's standard planning practice. So I'd have to do some research in the code where that authorization is specifically provided, but just pointing out that that is we are all already doing that with with other public hearing processes within the zoning code.
Okay.
Interesting, okay. What do you think, Dave?
Me?
Yeah,
Well, so my other side thoughts, because you know I got them. I mean, you all know that I have long had just a general heart wringing over recognizing the need to protect historic structures and the general appearance of Leadville as a National Historic District. But that with the friction of my interest and belief in the rights of property owners. So do I love this? No. Is it an improvement over what we had before? Yes. And I think that that's just the essence of the compromise that's going on in my heart wringing So I want to thank Chapin and the city attorney and the HPC for putting so much work into crafting this section of code. It is an improvement, and I'm still allowed to not like it, but approve of it. That's all.
Thank you, Dave. Any other comments or thoughts, city council on first reading? In which case I would entertain a motion, please.
Luna moves to adopt ordinance number 3, series of 2023, an ordinance repealing and reenacting chapter 17.44 of the Leadville Municipal Code concerning the regulations governing the city's National Historic Landmark Overlay District on first reading. I further move to schedule a second reading of this ordinance for city council's regular meeting on June 20th, 2023.
Grant seconds.
Is there any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Littleton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Lobby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Green?
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas?
Yes.
Councilmember Grant?
Yes.
Councilmember Littleton?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Next, the building planning zone, is that yours?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. This time we're going to resolution number 11, series of the amending and extending the Leadville Grand Rapids subdivision improvement agreement. Yes, I am.
I'm handing out a revision to, yeah, absolutely. All right. All right, good evening, Mayor and Council, it's me again.
Okay, you have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
I'll take it. So this resolution, if approved by council tonight, would authorize an amendment to the subdivision improvement agreement, the acronym for that is SIA, with High Country Developers LLC, who's currently constructing the Leadville Rail Yard development. The original SIA was dated September 1st of 2020, and this would essentially accomplish 3 things with this proposed resolution. Just to make sure everyone understands what an SIA is, I've included a definition in your packet, and see what page this is on. Give me 1 second, so I can direct everyone.
Is this in your staff report?
Yes, this would be-
92.
Yeah, page
Yeah.
92.
Thank you. Starting on 91, so this would be on 92. So this definition, essentially, an SA is a contract between a local government, municipal government, and a developer to ensure that the developer is providing the necessary public improvements like streets and sidewalks and infrastructure, utilities, etc., that is required to serve the development that they are constructing. So it's a contract, in this case, it's a contract between you, the City of Leadville Council, and High Country Developers. So this is a proposed amendment to that existing SIA. So as I mentioned, this would accomplish 3 things. This SIA would extend the time period at the request of the developer and by recommendation of staff to complete the public improvements to September 30th of next year. The current deadline is July 2nd, 2021. Staff cannot approve that administratively beyond July 2nd. The second piece,
2021 or 2023?
the proposed deadline would be September 30th of 2024.
Right.
The current deadline that's in the existing SIA is July 2nd of 2021. So I can't, the existing SIA allows a 2-year extension. So I can't extend that to go from 2021 2 years beyond to 2023. I can't extend that administratively beyond July 2nd. So I'm coming to you tonight for that authorization. The second important component that this SIA amendment would include would be a remaining phasing plan. The existing SIA did not include the required phasing plan, so this is an important component. And this would essentially provide a list of the remaining public improvements, break those remaining public improvements up to the COs. We connect those public improvements to the certificate of occupancy for the structures that are dependent upon those public improvements. So essentially, we have a schedule for the sequence of construction, and we would have some sort of leverage to ensure that those various phases, those various sequences of construction were completed prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy before those homes are sold and occupied. So the exhibit that I have provided in hard copy tonight, and for those council members attending via Zoom, I'm going to add this to the screen. Bear with me 1 second. So this is the revised exhibit that was revised as late as a few hours ago with the developer. This exhibit, which we included with the terms in the amended SIA, has 3 phases, remaining phases of phase 1. Phase 1 is filing 1 of the development, so A, B, and C. And so these remaining phases, the remaining public improvements include sidewalks, street signage, landscaping, paving of alleyways, parks and landscape, and irrigation. So that is what's in front of you is a modification will include the packet. The packet included phase 1A and phase 1B. This breaks this up into 3 phases, phase A, B, and C. The third important component of this is that the remaining phasing plan would, the amended SIA would include an additional escrow fund deposit to replenish the city's escrow fund account for this development to the tune of $144,000 approximately. We currently have $12,000 in this escrow account, so it's extremely important that this escrow account get refunded. So those are the 3 important components. Staff is requesting authorization to execute an amended SIA. So what's in front of you tonight are just the terms, but you do not have, you have a resolution to approve those terms. If this was approved tonight, starting tomorrow, I would work with the city attorney's office to have that amended SIA prepared with these terms, including that the exhibit that you have in front of you. And that would be executed by the 15th as the deadline. This is not a public hearing. I did receive 1 public comment letter regarding this requested recommended SIA amendment. And so that concludes my presentation, but I'd be happy to read that to the council if requested.
I'd like to hear.
Okay, it'd be easier if I put this on the screen, if you don't mind. I'll just share this on the screen.
Is the developer with us tonight? Any?
No. No, they basically said we were in agreement with staff, and they did not feel their attendance was necessary. I just recalled the person asked for to be anonymous, so I'm just going to not state their name, but I'm going to.
Wait, time out. We're not gonna allow an anonymous comment.
Okay, all right, so I received this via email. It had at the bottom it says consideration for to be anonymous, so I'll proceed with sharing that on the screen.
With their name?
No, they're just, give us their company.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I thought you were saying the opposite. They requested to be anonymous.
We won't accept an anonymous comment.
Understood, okay, sorry, I misunderstood, I apologize.
No, great, thank you.
Being Ward 2 representative, I did receive some emails concerning this. I believe a couple, I know Sean is present. And I believe Liz is on Zoom. So I'll let them tell their separate story, but I did receive another email from Casey Gazelle.
I think we have to be a little bit careful about this. This is not a public hearing. However, we can, if people, it just has to be very brief, it has to be on topic. The topic, which is the SIA itself. If they wander outside the subject of the SIA, then that's not something we can consider, so. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, who are we gonna hear from? Okay. Please come up.
We have these emails, they don't necessarily deal with the SIA specifically.
Then why would we entertain this? I don't understand.
Because they're sharing concerns about extending the time period for someone for a developer who's not done what they said all along. Why would they do that?
Okay. If you read the packet, one of the reasons that staff is recommending an extension is there are extenuating circumstances. COVID put a stop to everything. And so it put us into a period for a couple of years of relative inactivity. So just say that.
Can I give some context on this too? I think, one of the things that when Chapin first came on board, I asked him to look into was what was the compliance with this subdivision improvement agreement. And you can see from the staff report that this is something that we have been working on for a year. And what I think why would you extend it? Because this gives the plan and the teeth. This gives the plan of what's supposed to be done and the consequences of no certificate of occupancy that's not done. And so this gives us the details, almost the where, when, and why, and the consequences if it doesn't happen. And so we have been wanting to have this in writing, and I didn't realize the developer had agreed to this very specific plan. What we want are details as to what's supposed to be done, and then literally the certificates of occupancy for these particular lots will not be issued if that is not completed. And so this is the level of detail that wasn't included in the prior SIA. So it gives us an opportunity to create a new contract or an amended contract with the developer that puts those specifics into place.
I personally still feel like it would be appropriate to hear out if it is regarding this SIA, regardless of whether the comments are negative or not.
No, I don't have a problem with comments, whether they'll be on top. So we will hear from the public. I would like the public to limit their comments, maybe a couple minutes each. Sounds like we have several people to speak. But are you gonna be the first one to speak?
Look that way. So, Sean Morahan, resident of the Riviera. So I'll tell you, for the past 2.5 years, iCountry Developers has passed on every opportunity to complete work on homes and the greater community public improvements. Don't be fooled. It's not manpower, materials, machinery. It's project management. That's where our problem is. Refusal to communicate with homeowners, with staff, and a sense of entitlement and touchability. At every step of the way for homeowners in the rail yard, we've been met with excuses, dismissal, and disregard. This is the same for the city. iCountry Developers is not willing to complete work as contracted, regardless of whom the contract is with, whether that's the city or a homeowner. The public improvements could have and should have been completed prior to this past winter. But the machinery and manpower to move the dirt and set the forms were put to work on a home without a fire. This home is block 6, lot 9, which is a reward for the developer and one of his family members for their hard work. It's a spec home. The concrete from that home could have been poured aside. These public improvements could already be in place and benefiting the community, but a home for personal reward is taking precedence. Today, iCountry Developers wants an extension from the city to complete public improvements, but the chance to complete these for the past 18 months has been squandered in pursuit of personal reward. Nearly every homeowner has an incomplete home. Our contracts with HCD are beyond reach, good faith or reason, as is the city's. HCD simply chooses to do whatever they want without regard for the contract or the good of the greater community. The resolution before you tonight is an important step to bring HCD in line with the vision they portrayed for the future of Leadville. Promises were made, illustrated, contracted, and now being broken in. The resolution as drafted starts to remedy these failures and broken commitments of HCD, but it must force those improvements to be completed or another penny is taken for a home. The resolution as introduced cannot be piecemeal, or you'll only find yourselves adopting another resolution on this matter. HCD owes it to the residents of the rail yard and the greater Leadville community to deliver upon the vision and commitments delivered in word and visual form. Anything that allows them to take another step without having completed all the improvements of the phased areas is a loss to the greater community. And, the greater community as a whole, and a failure to serve all of Leadville.
Sean, you're
Yes.
about 2.5 minutes.
All right,
Please, right, got it.
Thank you.
All right.
ACD looks to sell block 6, lot 9, by take sidewalks. That's the last piece of leverage that the city has to actually get HCD to fulfill their commitment. We're creating sidewalks for community spaces. They've been afforded an unencumbered, unmonitored development in which they can operate however they saw fit. We're grateful for the planning director's hard work and commitment to write the areas and emissions that plagued this project from the start. To begin to hold HCD accountable and to look after the greater good of our community, we collectively want more from HCD in exchange for the sale of block 6, lot 9, and you should too. Sidewalks aren't enough. That house is built, he's gonna ask you for a seat, he's gonna apply for a CO in the next 3 weeks, and then everything else just gets to be put on the back burner. You'll also note, as you already did,
Sean,
the developer's not here.
you're way over the.
The developer's not here.
Got it. Who else, Tim?
I noticed that Liz Pittman, she submitted an email, she's on Zoom.
Liz, would you like to speak to us, please? She may have stepped away. Who else?
And I would just say that, the 3 other emails echo all these concerns.
Casey is what I have.
Can I
Okay.
yield any time? Can I yield my time to Sean? So that he can
No.
finish?
If you have a comment, please make it.
My comment is that that Sean is being truthful, I endorse what he said. Our house isn't complete. And I would like for you to not issue any COs until John Lichtenegger completes the work that he promised to do.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Casey, I'm sorry.
I think that was Ben.
That was Ben. Casey is the other one I haven't.
Oh, I see. I thought we were calling.
Yes, I have an email.
Yeah, no, Ben's actually my neighbor. Yeah, I mean, Sean has spoken the truth, about what's going on in this development, and if we've sent notes to city council, and they're well aware of the challenges that you guys are having here. If you give John and the development, an inch, I'm afraid he's gonna take more than that from you guys. And we're here and we want to be part of the community and want to build this community. In order to do so, I think it is with the sidewalks and the trees and completing houses, and holding John accountable to that, to the promises he made you years and years ago. So, thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Sorry about that, Ben. I got confused by who was speaking. Do we have anybody else who wants to speak?
Yes.
Please.
Honestly, been speaking, so I think, just to be clear. I think what we're asking is that, lot 9 be moved at least to the end of like phase 1B. And that landscaping, street trees, sod be moved up into 1B as well. That to give him the house that he is using as a gift for him and his family member. That's the only way to get him to do things, is to hold that for a longer amount of time to get a few more things done. So that we'll have to complete the things in a timely manner that he said we would do.
Okay, thank you. Chapin, I mean, I know the answer to this, but I mean, that's the whole point of this is you can't get figured out and see on that home until all these things are completed, but Chapin, please.
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, that's in simplest form, it can't, that house can't be occupied until all of the 5 things that we listed here are completed.
And so you have a revised exhibit, right? So just make sure we're talking about the, so the things that are in phase 1A are 285 lineal feet of concrete sidewalks, and I have a map, and I can pull that up for reference, and street signage. There are missing street signs. So for the, let's see, the COs that are listed in that, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings. 2 of those are 4-unit, townhomes.
Explain that one more time.
Yeah, sure. So
Block 5.
block 5, it is, so lots 1 through 4 is a townhome building with 4 units. And then lots 5 through 8 is a townhome building with 4 units, so 2 buildings, 8 units, so there'll be 8 individual COs there. And block 6 is 2 single family houses.
But
And those,
that's the house for personal gain, personal use.
I am absolutely not making any distinction on the individual lots based on their intended ownership. I'm being fair across the board. This is irregardless of property ownership.
Or sorry, go ahead, Tracy.
I have 2 questions. The first one is, of the public improvements that have been done, have they been approved by the engineers?
The engineer was here today inspecting those. So there was a report that was produced in 2021, which is the engineer's last inspection. And that identified deficiencies. The engineer was here today doing inspections for summer of this summer for the improvements that have been completed since 2021. And he will be producing a report that identifies any further deficiency from what's been constructed. The subdivision is approximately 80–85% constructed. The next step will, prior to any of these, so nothing has been accepted into the city of Leadville. We haven't begun probationary acceptance. The developer is, per the spacing plan, is proposing that they will be completing the required public improvements at the end of next summer. So the last bit of landscaping, is next summer. At that point, the engineer will do a third round of inspections, produce another report, and those 3 reports compiled together will document any deficiencies with the public improvements prior to the city beginning a probationary acceptance period. And that essentially is the warranty, starting the warranty period. So that report will break down what is required to be fixed right now. Like things like, that are needed for safety, or things that, not necessarily safety things, but should be identified to be replaced either before the warranty period begins or during the warranty period.
And I apologize, I have one more question. My second question is, why does he need another whole year to put in sidewalks and landscaping? Can he do it this summer?
I can't answer that question. If the developer was here, you could ask him that.
But you and I discussed that. Part of it is that if you build a sidewalk in front of a building that you are building.
These are people who are already living there and don't have sidewalks in front of their building.
I'm not sure that's.
What they're saying is that he is continuing to build without completing their lots and the public improvements on their lots, and that's what they're complaining about. And why isn't that being done before he continues building more buildings?
But I think that's incorrect. So Chapin will straighten
So
this
you're
out.
saying that
Here's the
these
map.
people, but their public comments are not being true?
I'm saying they have sidewalks. There's sidewalks in front of every building that has been built that has a certificate of occupancy in the roads. Is that your
Here's the
understanding?
map. Here's the map, and this is current as of a week or 2 ago.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Quick one. If we approve this, do you have administrative approval to extend it another 2 years? Are we redoing the SIA that gives you another administrative approval to give them another 2 years beyond 2024?
The existing SIA allows administrative approval up to 2 years.
Well, we're amending it now.
We're amending it right now, so the city council can amend those terms. those terms are not in your packet, that they haven't been drafted yet. You know, I'm assuming the city attorney is gonna start with a template of the existing SAA. And is going to, you know, revise where necessary and then include these terms in there, and that would be the amended SAA. So if city council wants to have a provision regarding renewal, then that's certainly under city council's purview.
Dana has her hand up.
Well, we'll get to the back. Dana, yes, please.
Yes, my concern is that the developer was able to spend the escrow down to 2%, which, like your note mentions, Chapin, is much lower than the 10% required, that we keep in the bank. And the escrow is, I think, the way that I see it, is what protects the city from a developer who does not complete, the work. So how are we going to protect ourselves from future efforts to overspend the escrow?
That's a great question. So there's a lot of background information that I didn't include in my presentation we're discussing now, so apologize if you would have liked to receive more background information, but I can answer some of these questions. And some of this information is provided in the memo. But regarding that question, so basically what happened is the developer was, so the original escrow amount was $581,000 for public improvements. So under the terms of the SAA, the developer is allowed to submit for, not reimbursement, but disbursement requests for work to be completed. That's the language. And so what the developer did is they submitted disbursement request with invoices saying this is money that I have spent. So essentially reimbursement requests. And those disbursements were approved. The first one, so I started last August, the first disbursement request that I received, and this is actually for another SAA for Mountain View Drive, which is a lower amount, but it's a separate SAA. It's one of two that we have with the developer. And so the first disbursement request that I received, I reviewed with the city engineer, and we identified that disbursement request was based on invoices and not based on the line item amounts in the SAA. And the total of those disbursement requests resulted in an amount less than 10%. And so going forward, the language in the SIA right now says for work they can submit for disbursement requests for work to be completed. But we've identified with the city engineer that should not be based on invoices for work spent. It should be based on the line item amounts that are like including your packet in that spreadsheet, the ECD.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ask you this.
Yeah.
What would happen if we did not grant the extension?
Okay.
What are the consequences of that?
All right, so this is where we're at. I've been working with this developer, since I started and started sending formal requests to extend the SAA, get the escrow funds, everything, all that's included in the terms here, connecting breaking the remaining improvements down into a phasing plan tied to the COs of the units, all things within the terms. At least 6 months went by where that was in writing and still not received. And so on May 15th of last month, I issued a breach of contract notice to the developer, giving them 30 days notice that they must comply with the SIA. In other words, they must extend the SIA, put up additional escrow funds, and have a remaining phasing plan. All things that are required by the SAA. If that is not, if they're not in compliance by June 15th, then that letter stated that the city would seek further enforcement, which under the terms of the existing ISAA include the delaying of land use applications, so site plan applications, not issuing building permits, and not issuing certificates of occupancy. So everything from the start to the end of construction. That's what the breach of SIA letter stated. So that is what we're up against is a deadline that we have given the developer. The developer has responded. Once that letter was provided, the developer has responded and provided the documentation that the city was requesting, that I was requesting. And so this is in front of you tonight because frankly, I want to get that escrow account funded. I want to have some teeth in terms of when I'm issuing a CO. Because the SIA right now does not provide that teeth. What it does say is that no COs shall be issued for the entire development until all of the public improvements are constructed. So it does say that. That is not the precedent that has been established. That is not how the city's been operating. That development is, you know, as I mentioned, 85% complete. And the residential portion of phase one, you know, is, you know, some of it has been occupied, but not all of it. I will say that it is, in my experience, it is atypical for all of the public improvements to be required to be completed before the first unit can be occupied. It is typical to include a phasing plan and an SIA. This SIA that we currently have, the one that's currently in effect, required that phasing plan, but it was never included as an exhibit. It never happened. And so that's why we're here today. So it's important for staff to replenish the escrow funds, to get a phasing plan. So I have teeth for COs. And to come up with a reasonable time period for the completion of those improvements based on that phasing plan.
So I have a process question. Basically, the way this is gonna shape out is, assuming you agree, which is a big assumption, to be honest, to pass this, we pass this, right? Then the process is, this is taken to attorney, review it, kind of shape out what the nitty-gritty details are, what the teeth include, and then we vote on that new.
That's not what based on this deadline, I am bringing the terms in front of you because frankly, we didn't want to have a resolution drafted out. If the city attorney didn't agree on the term. I'm sorry, if the city council did not agree on the terms.
Right.
So if the terms are agreeable to the city council, the next step would be, we would go to the city attorney's office tomorrow, get the resolution drafted that included, the SIA amendment that included these terms. And then that would be reviewed by staff and the developer and then be executed.
The short answer is we're under a time deadline, so our city attorney's recommendation was that we come to you with the nitty gritty. So this is the nitty gritty, and then the amendment will be the legal language that basically lays out these terms.
So this is it. This is basically what we're agreeing to. My second follow-up question to that was with regarding to the T. I feel like it's an administrative burden to continuously be overly reaching to a developer. And I would like to see some type of compensation for administrative time for failure to really get through this, because there was initial agreement and whether or not they were able to potentially complete it at this point doesn't matter to me. More so about if in the future, if there is continued issues with completing this process, it would make sense to me to include some sort of fees on top of not being able to. I don't know the legality behind that, I don't know if that's possible, but that's the type of fee that I would like to see in addition of not being able to have owner occupancy for any new units.
Do you, in your opinion, see this as the best way forward in order to get these things done?
Yes, this development is extremely out of compliance, but we have some errors on the city side. We did not include a phasing plan in our SIA.
And that's what this does.
That's what it does.
That's the escrow fund, replenish. And that's the easiest way forward.
Yeah.
Or the best, most productive way.
Correct.
What are the ramifications of him not doing those things besides not getting the CO?
So we would be back in the breach of contract.
How quickly?
As of next week.
So it's this or nothing, we can't amend this.
Well, you can certainly amend this.
Yeah, you can absolutely amend the terms.
And I would propose that he has until October 30th, 2023, or October 31st. And as these public has recommended, removing block 6, lot 9 to phase 1C. Cause I don't understand why he needs 2 summer instead of 4 sidewalks. Again, October 31st, 2023.
If it were only sidewalks, it wouldn't be the issue. It's that the buildings have to be completed with the sidewalks. That's something
Well, that's
should be
not what it
stopped.
says. I'm sorry, Mayor. This says they have to complete sidewalks and landscaping.
Right.
And that's all I can deal with. I can't deal with how he's building homes. That's not under our purview, but I can deal with the public improvements he is required to provide.
Right, but he has to do it, that's why it's fixed. He has to do it as the buildings are completed.
Okay, I'm
Then-
only pulling one building out and putting it under phase 1C, which apparently is almost complete. And frankly, he has taken advantage of us every step of the way, and I don't see why we should be amenable to what his demands are at this point.
Chapin, you've inspected this property. First of all, there was the intimation that there are homes that people are living in that don't have sidewalks. Is that true?
I'm gonna put a map on the screen, so there's a very clear understanding of what is remaining to be completed. So this map does not do a great job of showing what units are occupied or what units are remaining to be complete. I'm assuming that most people have a general idea of where things are built and where things are not. But to answer the question. Like this unit here, everybody see this on the screen? This unit here is occupied but does not have a sidewalk.
But he told us that sidewalk is there.
This is as of the last week. I
understand. Do you have-
I'm based on information that's,
I got it.
a week or two old, so I can
Okay.
get this prepared. Unless I'm missing something, I'm not seeing anything else. These units right here are occupied. I'm sorry, these units are occupied. This sidewalk is technically part of, it's on HOA, will be on HOA property. It's not part of the construction documents. The developer, I want to say it's voluntarily said this can be included in the SIA. It's not something that is required under the current SIA. So it has been included. But that sidewalk is not constructed and these units are occupied.
So if it's already done, what's the problem shortening the deadline?
But back to the idea that the
Sorry,
issue is not the sidewalks. He could build sidewalks all day long. But then when you have to build a building and you have to go over those sidewalks in order to build the building, then it's fruitless to build a sidewalk where a building does not exist until such time as it does exist.
I believe they're
That's what the
alleyways
phasing
for all
plan
these
is about.
buildings.
Pardon me?
I believe they're alleyways for all these buildings.
Right.
So you don't have to go over a sidewalk to build that building. You can use the alleyway.
Yeah. See here, so. The developer, so when I reached out to when I was working with the developer saying we need to have a remaining phasing plan. Please let us know what your sequence of construction will be for both the public improvements and the COs. So that we can come up with some reasonable thing for how these COs line up with public improvements. And these need to be considered spatially as well, like I'm showing on the screen for what public improvements like sidewalks are necessary for which homes. I offered to the developer that there's flexibility on the number of phases. So in other words, I would be perfectly fine with 10 phases. All right, so the sidewalks and landscaping that are, in the portion of the park that's connected to certain homes, those public improvements that I just mentioned, be connected to those COs. What the developer did is they came back with just 2 phases of construction, 2023 and 2024 construction. I went, as late as today, had 3 different meetings with the developer, in person on phone, and communicated to the developer that, that this should be broken up into more phases, because they had a concern with not being able to get COs related to certain public improvements. What you see in front of you, just to clarify, in terms of what the developer's intentions are in terms of phase 1A, phase 1B, and phase 1C, is that they have communicated that phase 1A and some of phase 1B would be constructed during 2023. So to get to, sorry, I just picked Councilman Loretton's comment, phase 1C is not anticipated for 2023, that's anticipated for 2024. So just considering your comment of, end of 2023 construction season, it is the developer's intent to do phase 1A and part of phase 1B if we were to implement that requirement, something that I think the developer would even consider signing to. It would be to phase 1A and phase 1B to up to 2023 construction. I think for the developer, I'm just going to assume what the developer would say if you ask them that question. Phase 1C is absolutely 2024. And they would not agree to any kind of contract that required phase 1C to be constructed prior to 2023.
So can I just kind of summarize, like, the reason I brought that up was the concern that we were talking about, constructing the improvements and having them be run over and dealt with as you're doing construction. So that's why my question to Chapin was, if we did 10/31/2023, what would that work for? And the short answer to that is it wouldn't work for 1C because you'd require the improvements, and then you'd be driving within them. So that was the point.
One issue that I have with this is there a way to say phase 1A, you are required to finish it by 23? From what I understand, and I'm not very good at this, I've never doing this in my life. Basically, this is just, and maybe it's not realistic to do it all in a year anyways, but this all has to be completed by the end of 24, or whenever the deadline is set for 24, right? So if the developer wanted, they could potentially, which again, I don't think maybe based on what you have been saying, realistic, but could potentially stall out 1A until next year if they so chose to do 1A, 1B, and 1C in 1 year.
In other words, if they were to flip those.
No, not necessarily, because I understand that they have to do that in this specific process, but more so delay even starting on 1A until next year.
Well, they would be missing out on those two fourplexes and the house that they want if they did.
Right. I understand.
Push them to do that. But I can't guarantee that all those that they want to sign, but that council can certainly authorize those terms.
Maybe now, but I can't be sure. I haven't inspected. I don't know when last I've checked this out there.
Today.
So what if we said something along the line, and again, we are proposing an amendment that they can decide not to sign, and then they're back to the breach situation. But what if we said remaining phase 1A and remaining phase 1B, and that date would, be somewhere around 10/31/2023. And then we said remaining phase 1C, we would keep that as the same date that's in the staff report, September 30, 2024, and those would be our proposed terms.
That would make me feel comfortable, yeah, as a complete, because from what I understand, what the issue that I have. Is that it seems like the developer is taking their sweet time getting development done, and I would like to hold them accountable to making sure that certain things are done at certain times. And there's a clear deadline as to when they have to be done and what actions we will take if those are not done. And I would like to add as many pieces as possible and as sharp as they can be to assure that this is done in a proper way. And this is done in accordance to what is reasonable and agreeable. I have no issues with it going into 24. It seems to me like that's your takeaway, that this would require to wait till 24 for especially phase C. But since 1A and 1B are almost done anyways,
I don't see it as unreasonable to maybe make some modifications to 1A with what lots are there. I personally have no dog in that fight, but if that's something that councils feel strongly about, then I don't see an issue with that. But making sure that the 1A and 1B, the remaining of it's completed, since it's already almost done anyways. That's what I would like to see. I don't think that that would be an issue if they're actually almost done. And if they want to be realistic about finishing their development anyways, I think that gives us an opportunity to kind of use our teeth earlier than waiting till 24 to use teeth, so to say. Because at that point, they would be breaching the contract instead of waiting until 24 to breach the contract, right? So that's kind of the thought process that goes behind specifying that the completion of 1A and B be included in this time frame, and 1C can be included in 24.
Okay, so to make sure that I would be, please.
I'm gonna say, we're not gonna take any more public comment on this. It's strictly city council debate. I appreciate you having an opinion on this.
Mr. Mayor, what I want to present and tell you what improvements there would be unencumbered. There's no construction to happen on Mineral Belt Green or McClary Park. Those can be completed, and there's no sidewalk in front of the houses that are complete on Mineral Belt Green, at Mineral Belt Park. So as the expert who lives there, I can tell you that's what's completed, what can be completed, and will not be trampled on by construction.
Thank you. I'd like your chief's opinion on Christian's suggestion that 1B would be completed this year. And so that's 9 more buildings. Is it, I guess my question to you is, in your view of this, this development, can they complete all those in that time frame? Or worst case scenario, can they go ahead and complete all the SI requirements regardless of whether they complete these buildings?
So phase 1B, if we're to basically include this with phase 1A to be completed by October 31st. Certainly, the landscape can be installed this summer, but parks, landscape, and irrigation for like McCleary Park here and Mineral Belt Green here. In my opinion, there's absolutely nothing keeping Mineral Belt Green in terms of adjacent construction from being constructed. That's grass, topsoil, irrigation, trees, signage, etc. Here, block 5, all of these units are under construction. I'm expecting those are going to be ready for CO here in a few weeks. So there's active equipment that's on this property right here, but on the park, there parking material, storing material, parking equipment, etc. So I see that once these units are completed in a few weeks, that McCleary Park could be completed this summer. So that's parks, landscape, and irrigation. I think concrete sidewalks in phase 1B, which are shown on the screen in blue, are if the developer is planning to construct remaining phase 1B units, block 3, for example, they may want to access the property across the sidewalk. And so that could result in damage to construction. Yes, this entire neighborhood is predominantly alley. So there's just damage to sidewalks, so the developer would have to consider that. But I see that parks, landscape, paving and concrete pouring could be completed this summer in phase 1B.
Isn't that all project management and timing of how you're putting in your improvements versus your buildings? I don't.
Sure, and we're in a situation where this.
Supposedly he's a professional.
This phasing plan wasn't incorporated from the beginning, so something should have been in the agreement that made sense. We don't have that, so now we're retrofitting to what's out there right now. And and frankly, this developer is difficult to deal with. And I've been negotiating, and as of today, I got this. What was included in the packet, the developer did not agree with. They originally did, and they backtracked on that. So as of today, as of a few hours ago, I have an agreement, with the developer that they're comfortable with. If the council wants to advise or revise something, I certainly support the council. It just means that I go back to the developer and, they may not sign the agreement.
Okay,
And
I want to hear from other city council members. Shannon?
I will go for this October 31st thing if we move that block 6, lot 5, 9 to the bottom of 1B.
The bottom of 1B. Okay. Jay?
It all smells better today. It's smelly.
Looks bad too.
But I think I would be amenable to the amendments that have been suggested.
Rebecca?
I think the city was put in a difficult position, and I think Chapin has done a really good job trying to rectify mistakes that have been made in the past. It's imperfect, but I think it's a huge improvement. And it seems like if we can get 1A and 1B complete by this fall, October 23, I think that's a good step in the right direction.
Dana, can you hear me?
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Thomas. I have known this developer since the beginning, and he is very difficult and full of bluster, and I don't trust him. So I would say my main concern is putting in ample safeguards for the city, to either give us power to come down hard on a breach of contract, or to maintain a level of escrow so that, if he does give up and walk, then we have something to complete some of the necessary improvements with.
Also would add that I don't think that any of this should go beyond 2024.
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed.
There should be no more extensions.
That can be a term. No opportunity for extension.
Yes.
I would say, I don't love the idea of moving block 6, what was it, 9? And the reason I say that is it just feels like we're just trying to be punitive, and I understand that. If people are frustrated, but it is my understanding also that particular home is built, and along with these other 8 homes. So what we have to, our Chapin's leverage in all this are the certificates of occupancy. And making all these things happen before a CO is issued. So I think the safeguards are in place under these. I like your idea, Christian, of saying phase B has to be completed by October 31st of 2023. I think that's doable.
I would love, I understand that this may affect negatively the negotiation, but for us, and that's the whole purpose of the comments of making sure that this is 2023 so that we can act sooner rather than 24. To have more teeth, that's why I suggested the fines. I'm not sure what that best looks like, to be honest. I trust you all as professionals to understand what is the best sort of, you broke our contract, we're gonna come down hard on you. So at this point, I do feel like it's been long overdue. We've been at this for long before even this process began. So I genuinely feel like it's okay to come down hard. That's the whole point of there being some sort of consequences to your action, or lack of action. And I would love to see a little bit more than just what has been presented, but if that's what's best, then I wholeheartedly believe and accept that as that being the best consequence, right, of breaching. But having said, I would love for this to continue to make sense to me. It seems reasonable, and I support it with said amendments. I'm okay with moving lot 9, block 6, or whatever it is forever.
Sure.
And what you have in remaining phase, I'm sorry, remaining phase 1C, it says landscaping, tree sod, etc. Is that for everything out there? So we're looking at dirt for another year and a half, dirt and rocks and gravel piles and all of that for another year and a half totally? And is there a way
So
to
your
do that?
contract with the developer, the original contract. That term right there, landscaping, street trees, sod, et cetera, that is the only requirement that you have under your current contract with the developer. For any streetscape landscaping, period. There's not even an amount included in the engineer's cost estimate. There's not landscaping for parks or streetscape landscaping included in the construction documents. You have very little, so that terminology is exactly what is included in the original ECE. I don't know what else to say, but there's very little detail that you originally had regarding landscaping.
Is there a way to move that up? I'm asking in terms of what makes sense from a logical perspective.
I'm using I'm using the terminology that was originally in that ECE because frankly, getting anything else, we wouldn't have been able to get here in front of council by that deadline, we wouldn't been able to get the civil documents. So yes, you could absolutely move that requirement up to, have all street landscaping done by October in phase 1B. But, in terms of specifying exactly what that is, right now, we don't have anything beyond what I've already stated. In terms of specifying where that's going or how many trees that is, for example.
So would we have anything different for 2024? Would we have any other words added between now and 2024? To make it, so we know there's gonna be 72 trees and X number of big giant rocks put out there.
Now, without bringing back the construction documents and having their engineers and landscape architects, et cetera, show revised civil plans. These are terms that you can negotiate, but I'm using basically the language from the original line items from the original agreement. And so I'm not saying that additional requirements for subdivision improvements are required with this amendment. The city council can certainly go there at that point, but at this point, I'm not recommending it. Just due to the, I guess, efficiency and just trying to get us caught up.
Thank you, I appreciate your opinion on that.
If the developer ends up disagreeing with whatever modifications we make, they would obviously be breaching contract at that point. That's the deadline that we have set. Would we then come back at the table and renegotiate, or is that just like they're breaching and they're breaching, that's it?
So yeah, as of, I would inform the developer that these are council's terms, the developer does not agree, then from June 15th, we issued a letter notifying them that the city is now conducting that further enforcement, so we're not issuing building permits, we're not issuing certificates of occupancy. And I can take direction from city council regarding any specifics of that. But I would basically be implementing the terms that are in the SIA for that. And then, that would be, forcing with a heavy hand, the developer to, I guess, to come in front of you and negotiate these terms. Yeah. Okay.
So the consequences of the breach of contract are the 3 bullet points on page 2 of the staff report. But yeah.
Okay. We haven't heard from Tracy.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
So at this point, I need clarity. First of all, I need to hear what staff's ultimate recommendation is based on what we have in front of us.
Sure, yeah. So absolutely supportive of no extension. I think the developer would agree to that also. I would have to review the fine print of the existing SAA regarding fines, Councilman Leals, to address, his comment regarding fines that may already be in there, but, perhaps the developer would be agreeable to, if I'm not following the terms, then there are fines associated with that. I can't speak for the developer, but I would be certainly supportive of that term. Considering that the developer originally proposed, phase, and this is including in your packet, but a good portion of what is in phase 1B is proposed in the documents that are in your packet from the developer for 2023 construction. Then it's not the terms the developer agreed on to today, but I mean, frankly, I can try and push the developer to agree to that as, hey, you gotta get some landscaping and additional sidewalks in this summer. They're already gonna be having landscape crews come out. They're already gonna be having concrete crews come out. So there may be some impacts to sidewalks that are getting run over by equipment with homes that are not planned to be constructed in 2023. But that's what it really just comes down to, is that would be the developer's argument. I'm gonna construct sidewalks for homes that I'm not building until next summer. And that they're gonna get damaged with, skid steers and front end loaders running over them, but that's what it comes down to.
They should have made a better phase plan to get it, to be honest.
And that,
Can we put it there? That first of all, we're saying all the SIA, we're not saying they have to build these buildings that, but we are saying all of the tenants of the SIA have to be completed by October 31st, 2023 in phase 1 and phase 1B. Could we also put in there that any damage to the sidewalks is still the developer's responsibility to repair before we accept those sidewalks?
yeah, I'm gonna just try and take an opportunity to simplify this enough. There are absolutely developments all over the country that are built where the subdivision improvements are constructed prior to the homes being CO'd. This is an alley loaded development, which is unique for developments. This is a traditional urbanist style design neighborhood where the homes are featured, are alley loaded. And so on all of those alleys, except for block 1, are constructed. Block one alleys being constructed right now. So there is absolutely a way that the developer can find a way to project manage this development in a way where they can construct the lots without driving over the sidewalks. I don't want to misrepresent that.
Thank you.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. That's my opinion.
So do we need a motion? Move us along.
Can I get 1 second to show this? This is this SPA. Well, it says that the developer should post additional supplement escrow funds and teams sufficient.
Well, she figured that, I will say that a comment popped up on there and said, well, if you give the developer a CO, then you lose all your leverage, but they've got back, the leverage comes first. So it's just the opposite of what they think. I did see that comment and,
So we get the feedback about administrative costs, and I'd like to run this by our city attorney, but in the SIA section 6 escrow funds, it does say developers shall be required to post additional or supplemental escrow funds in an amount deemed sufficient and approved by Leadville to pay for all costs of construction, including any administrative costs and contingency amounts. So I will check and see if we can increase the amount of the escrow to include some type of administrative costs.
That would make me happy.
I guess is that.
Yes.
I like
yes.
that, I like that, yes. I think it's appropriate in circumstances.
Especially with the amount of time that taken is spent, you spent, somebody spent chasing something.
We have the increase in escrow, we have the October 31st, 2023 deadline. Phase 1A and phase 1B. And the 2024 deadline for phase 1C not to be extended past 2024.
Correct, and then moving that one lot, block 6, lot 9 out of phase 1A into phase 1B, is that consensus?
I don't agree with that. I think the only reason to do it is punitive, if it's almost built and it gives us the carrot. It is part of the carrot to get. This is a new agreement, that Chapin's worked very hard on. And he's put carrots in there quite on purpose to get this accomplished. So I don't see any reason to change the intent.
I don't care, but would it be reasonable to say if that is the breaking point of the development to move it to 1B? Is that like, if he says no because of this, can we give you the ability to say, okay, we'll move it? Or just present it in like in a modified way?
That's extremely awkward, but
Sure.
yes, you can, that can be a term, but.
Yeah, because then he gets more bargaining, then Chapin's put in a terrible predicament of thinking, of the guy thinking he can bargain on everything.
Okay, then, I mean, I don't care, I don't have a dog in the fight.
I don't want to put Chapin in that spot.
No, it's a very good point. At this point, we're looking at the least bad options. I get it. But I appreciate what Chapin's done in putting this together and putting this in a position to succeed. I think that's a good thing.
The only thing I'm gonna throw out, and again, I'm maybe channeling Christian here, is I don't necessarily want to tie a certificate of occupancy to the people who are gonna occupy a building. And so that's the only reason I'm uncomfortable with moving it to a different phase, is this is based upon this phasing plan right now where it is, it's based upon time and who's gonna be occupying. So that's the only reason as Chapin said, he's treating everybody equally based upon time and construction as opposed to occupants. And so that's the only reason it makes me a little uncomfortable, is it's based upon occupants. And I understand the reasoning for it. I'm just saying I'm a little uncomfortable with that.
And my understanding is if they complete phase 1 and stop at phase 2 and it is now occupied and this unit, regardless, whoever occupies it, again, don't really care, is occupied, but they stop right once 1A stops, then like. I guess from the community's perspective, there's an issue from that. I personally, but it seems like, would it be then reasonable to just say block 6 moves to phase 1B so that they can't just complete phase 1A and not complete phase 1B without, because it's like the biggest gripe from what I understand from everyone here is 1A and 1B are essential and they needed to have been done a year ago. And if they're going to be done this year anyways, I don't see what the issue would be with moving it to 1B. That way they have to complete through 1A and they then get to 1B. I guess that's the way that I see it, and then so that they can get to that point. If we're gonna move it at all, that makes sense to me. I don't know if there's a share.
Then move all of that, block 5, block 6 to the bottom.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
If we don't want to pull one piece of property out, move them all to the bottom.
So then that's just one phase.
It's phase 1AB.
Right. Okay. Chapin, you negotiated this. You needed to do it.
Well, I'm just listening to that last comment. So you're basically proposing phase 1A and phase 1B get combined into one phase. Which, okay, so that was exactly what we had as of 8 o'clock this morning. All right, that was what I thought I had agreement with the developer on.
Okay.
Okay, so there's so much history here, but the developer came back and said, I apologize, I can't remember all of the specifics, but there are certain sidewalks that were not going to be constructed in like the next few months, and they're going to be constructed later this summer. And so that was the main reason why this was broken up into phase 1A and phase 1B. And so we can certainly recombine that. it just goes right back to what I said earlier about the developer wants to construct certain sidewalks later. But going back to my comment that I emphasized, all of these sidewalks, phase 1A and B can be constructed. This summer, it's, the developer can figure out a way to alley access these lots to not damage the improvements they've installed.
I guess what the nice is, like, as someone who's not as concerned with moving into any of that, or who's moving into what, it kind of then makes me worried that they're going to complete 1A and stop there, call it good, because then they have enough to. And would the teeth that we put on this be able to stop anyone from moving in if they were safe to complete phase 1A, but not 1B?
But at the escrow takes care of it.
Right.
The escrow is for actually all 3 phases. So if anything ever happens for whatever reason, then the money's there to complete the SIA requirements in all 3 phases. So sorry, it didn't make really sense, but.
That's fine to me, I just. As an outsider and who doesn't know as much as everyone else seems to know, that's kind of why, that's the only thing that I could see as being the reason why it would make sense to. Change 1A and B if they're really gonna be completed in the same year at the same time. And I don't see why they couldn't just remove literally this portion of covering remaining phase 1B of the agreement, and that would change anything. I guess I just don't see how that would change anything really.
Because they're not gonna be done at the same time.
Right, and
Same year, yes, but not same time. So that's what the phasing is about, at this time.
Right, and I guess it doesn't matter. I don't have any strong attachments to it anyways.
I think my final thoughts to just respond to all the comments I've heard is, I have negotiated this, and negotiation, by its very nature, it's a give and get. And so to get the developer to agree to be in front of you tonight, although not physically, but with terms that the developer agreed upon, to get the city of Leadville caught up so we have some teeth to actually get things required to be done. There was some give to this, and a lot of that give was, in phase 1A. But a lot of that get comes from phase 1B and phase 1C. So yes, this could be stronger on the city's side, absolutely agree. And if we were to proceed to make this stronger, I can continue to negotiate. And that so those terms in terms of having it required by October 31st, I can push for that, I can negotiate for that. But to get to you in front of you today, to try to get things caught up as efficiently as possible and to gain as much ground from the city side as quickly as possible, I negotiated to these terms as of a few hours ago to in front of you.
I personally feel comfortable saying that the 2 amendments we have is limit phase 1A and B to 2023. No modifications on what's in the context of it. And phase 1C to 2024, and none of them can be amended or extended in any way, shape, or form.
And we also talked about administrative costs, but that's already in the escrow, in the SIA, increase the escrow for the administrative costs.
We'll see if we
What do
can.
you think about that?
Our read of the SIAs, that's possible, just want to check with our city attorney on that.
Yeah. No extensions. Okay. I would entertain a motion, please.
Like this.
With the motion, we just clearly state the additional terms, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Luna Land moves to adopt resolution number 11, series of 2023, authorizing a first amendment to subdivision improvement agreement by and between City of Leadville and High Country Developers LLC concerning Leadville Rail Yard Filling 1, with the modifications that both phase 1A and phase 1B be finished in 2023 with no extension, October 31st, 2023 with no extensions, and phase 1C be finished in 2024, September 30th, 2024 with no extensions. In addition,
Do we have anything with that, Stephanie?
Looking into the possibility of increasing the administrative costs in the escrow fund.
Yeah, in addition to looking into the possibility of increasing the administrative fees or funds in the escrow fund.
Do I have a second? I'll second. Thank you. Any other discussion? I just wanted to check it. I know this is hard. Thank you.
Thank you for working through this tonight. It's technical, it's intense.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Larissa? Yeah. Mayor Levy?
Yes.
Councilmember Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Green?
Yes.
Councilmember Lilloye?
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas?
Yes.
Councilmember Grant?
No.
I'm positive.
All right,
I feel strongly about moving the property.
thank you. It's my hope that this puts us in position to hold this development to the task as they have been assigned with Friday. And that this is a successful development. Hopefully, we want this development to be built out properly and to be successful. That's happening. Okay. At this time, we have council reports.
I think we're really past times, guys. So.
Okay, mayor's report, Goldenboro received a plaque today as a national historic place. It was actually kind of neat, not much of a ceremony, but still, they went to a lot of trouble getting it. So congratulations to Goldenboro. Anybody else? Public meetings planner? We don't care? Just want to make sure.
Amendment next for Friday, is that on there already? I think I saw it on the calendar, so it should be on there. Not Friday, sorry. Monday. Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you.
I closed it.
Good time. Steve, would you like to make a public comment?
Well, let's see, where's the clock at? Okay, so it's 11 there. To finish up this article, the last sentence in the May 22nd, I think it is New Yorker article on Supreme Court Justice Mr. Thomas and the situation. The court should not be the sole lawmaker, judge, and enforcer regarding its members' conduct, and ethics or any other matters. So these issues of conflict of interest, we had won the consideration of this by the city council, and they asked the attorney, and everybody says, "Yeah, that sounds fine with me. We're not going to, do anything in the case of what we were talking about there at the time." And so I don't think that's good. There was an article in the Denver paper, I think it was when the May 31st, about transcendental meditation being used to deal with burnout. I'm being reductive here, with the emergency personnel in the fire department, or first responders rather. And they ended up saying that if you have a tire that has a nail in it, it's not just flat where the nail is, it's flat everywhere. And I think that's what we have with these conflicts of interest if we're not addressing them. Sometimes the system gets so involved in saying this is okay and that's not okay. There was a case where a developer in New York was found by the courts not to have a conflict of interest in their being on an urban renewal committee. But sometimes the law doesn't make the right decisions and things like this. So one of the legs on this conflict of interest thing is there's two legs. Is there a financial, gain here for this person? And also, is there a propriety of, a damage to the public image of the bodies that these people represent? And I think there is a damage to have realtors involved in government, making governmental land use decisions. One city council member having two positions in the county government, and the city magistrate being also advising the county. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is, according to that, 9:38, the city council is adjourned.